Welcome to Cosmic Wand, the free library of your favorite fictions, fanfictions and many more. Make sure to subscribe and be part of our family. Now let's begin. It was a tragic day for the Dursleys. When Petunia Dursley née Evans became pregnant, she and her husband Vernon Dursley were so happy they had even thought about names, Dudley if a boy and Violet if a girl. The girl's name was based on the flower pattern Petunia's parents seemed to be fond. They named her sister Lily. However, that joy became complete sadness when Petunia not only suffered a miscarriage but it also resulted in her being unable to become pregnant ever again. News of this caused their neighbors and Vernon's co-workers to feel sorry for the couple. Family, however, was a completely different affair. Vernon's sister Marge sent him a letter telling him she always knew Petunia was too skinny for bare children and he should get a new wife. Vernon sent a reply stating his sis Chair should either apologize or never talk to them ever again. Petunia's sister, on the other hand, was pregnant with a child of her own and the Dursleys decided not to tell the bad news out of fear shock would cause the tragedy to repeat. Lily and Petunia might have grown distant ever since Lily was accepted into a school that didn't accept Petunia, but there were limits to hatred. Once Lily's baby, a boy Lily and her husband James Potter named Harry, was born, the Dursleys sent a letter sharing the bad news and explaining their reasons to withhold them. The Potters showed sympathy and appreciated the Dursleys' consideration towards them. The tragedy served to reconcile the Evans sisters. However, Lily and Petunia didn't have time to chat since the Potters were hiding from an evil wizard. You read it right, wizard. Magic is real, but wizards and witches have long passed laws requiring this fact to be hidden from muggles. That's how wizards and witches called people who couldn't do magic. Wondering what the Potters had to do with magic, aren't you? Well, James Potter came from a long line of wizards and witches and Lily Potter was what the wizarding world called a muggle-born. Wizards and witches born to muggle parents. In fact, the estrangement between Lily and Petunia came from that. The school Lily was accepted in but Petunia wasn't was a school of magic where wizards and witches learned how to keep their magic properly controlled as well as history of the wizarding world. If the history professor didn't bore you into sleep, that is. A little more than 1 year later, the Dursleys found a baby at their doorstep. Thanks to a photograph sent to them by the Potters last Christmas and the stuff Vernon heard the previous night from wizards and witches in so much of a celebratory mood they ignored their own secrecy laws, the Dursleys had a pretty good idea of who that baby was. Despite having allowed Albus Dumbledore to talk her into believing there was no other option for recently orphaned baby Harry James Potter than being raised by his muggle relatives, Transfiguration Professor Minerva McGonagall was still afraid they'd hate magic to the point of mistreating him. Fortunately, her worries were in vain. Vernon and Petunia Dursley wanted a son so badly that, once it was all cleared with the Muggle authorities, they gladly adopted Harry despite still having some fear of magic. The authorities were baffled about Harry being left at the Dursleys' doorstep, but, since they were Harry's only known family and there was no evidence of any wrongdoing on their part, they were allowed to be his guardians. As the years passed, Harry James Dursley Potter, the Dursleys added their name into Harry's, eventually started to show signs of magic. Remembering what his parents, he saw the Dursleys as his parents despite knowing he's actually their nephew, told him about what to do whenever he saw something odd. Nobody there seemed to have any logical explanation for it being possible. He told them about having somehow turned the teacher's hair blue. Easy there, Harry, Vernon said. What makes you so sure it was you who turned her hair blue? Well, I was angry at her for mocking my messy hair. I wanted hers to be blue and it suddenly happened, Dad. Harry answered. I'm scared. Well, there's no need to, Harry. Petunia explained. Your mother is right, Harry. Vernon replied. There's an explanation for this, but before we start telling it, you need to promise you'll listen to everything before reacting. I promise, Dad, Harry said. After that, Vernon told her magic was real but magical people kept it hidden from non-magical people or muggles, as most wizards and witches liked to call non-magicals. Vernon and Petunia were allowed to know because Petunia's sister, whom Harry knew to be his birth mother, was a witch, which wasn't as offensive as some muggles and Harry's birth mother herself initially believed. To escape persecution from witch hunters and save muggles who were mistaken for wizards and witches, they passed an international statute of secrecy to keep themselves hidden. Then, Do you mean it was my fault the teacher's hair became blue? Harry sadly asked. No, Harry, Petunia answered in a comforting tone. That was a case of accidental magic. Once magical children start showing signs of their magic, some cases may occur. The Ministry of Magic, that rules the magical side of Britain, understands those accidents might happen. The worst they might do to interfere in some cases is sending someone to cover it up. Will they punish me, Mum? Harry asked out of fear. No, dear, she calmly answered. At this early age, you can't be expected to have control over your magic. It was the same with your mother. Your birth mother, I mean. How did she learn about this wizarding world? Harry asked. Well, your mother was a rather unique case, Harry. Petunia explained. Usually, Muggleborns and their parents are told about the wizarding world by the time they reach the age of 11. Your mother, on the other hand, was fortunate enough to learn earlier because a young wizard around her age lived near us when she started showing signs of magic. Do you mean my birth father? Harry asked. No, but he'd like to be. Petunia answered. That boy was Severus Snape, who became a year mate of your parents at Hogwarts. That's the school where they learned how to control their magic. It's regarded as the best magical school. What happened to this Snape person, Mum? Harry asked. While at Hogwarts, Snape befriended the wrong crowd and it eventually ended the friendship between him and your birth mother, Harry. Petunia explained. We basically lost contact with him ever since. By what I recall, it all started when he was sorted into Slytherin. Sly. What? One of the 4 houses of Hogwarts, son. She answered. The 4 founders of Hogwarts didn't agree about which standards they should set for heir students, so the school was divided into 4 houses, one for each founder. It's said Gryffindor is for the brave and chivalrous. In fact, I recall Lily telling me James's family was known for being sorted there. James is so far the last Potter who ever entered Hogwarts as a student. Petunia explained. You'll be probably expected to be sorted there, albeit it doesn't need to happen. Why? Our birth parents had a year mate who was sorted into Gryffindor despite coming from a family of wizards and witches who are usually sorted into Slytherin. What happened to him? Your guess is as good as ours. Vernon answered with a dismissive tone. Anyway, the other houses are Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw and Slytherin. Hufflepuff is for hard work, tolerance and fair play, but several wizards and witches dismiss it as a house for those who aren't good enough for either of the other 3. Ravenclaw is for those who value knowledge, and Slytherin is the house for ambition and cunning. Where they come up with those names for the houses, Mum? Harry asked. Those were the founders' surnames, Harry. Petunia answered. It couldn't be helped. Unfortunately, Harry, ambition and cunning are traits usually associated to bad people, and that seemed to include the wrong crowd Petunia was talking about. Vernon added. Well, Harry, now that you know about magic, do you have any questions? Petunia asked. If my birth parents were magical, how could they be killed? Harry asked in confusion. Couldn't they have used their magic to stop the criminal? The criminal was also a wizard, Harry. Vernon explained. Like in every society, the wizarding world has good people and bad people. They also have laws. That brings up another thing I'd like to discuss with you, Harry. Petunia said as she brought a book. This is a book of wizarding law. We'd appreciate if you read it during your free time so you'd be prepared when you return to the wizarding world to learn how to control your magic. I'll do it, Mum. Good, Petunia replied. This book might be a couple of decades or some old, but considering how old the laws written at it are, despite it being updated to the day it was written, it's unlikely something had changed from the time your grandparents bought it. With this on mind, Harry James Dursley Potter spent every free time he wasn't using for outdoor venturing to add about the laws of the world he was born into. Years later, the so-expected Hogwarts acceptance letter arrived. Mr. H. Potter, Harry's bedroom, 4 Privet Drive, Little Whinging, Surrey. Harry found it odd. What's with all these specifics? He asked. Are they spying on us or something? While it did not surprise me given how much importance that headmaster gives you because of that stupid prophecy, your birth mother had a similarly addressed letter, Harry. Petunia answered. What about my birth father, Mum? We weren't acquainted to him back then and we never had the curiosity to ask. Petunia explained. Well, Don't keep us anxious. Son, Vernon asked. What does the letter say? Harry then eagerly opened the envelope and read the letter. Yes, I was accepted. He then kept reading. Albus. Dumbledore remains the headmaster and the letter still informs his other titles. Professor McGonagall remains the deputy headmistress and, his enthusiasm diminished at this part. First-year student. S are still not allowed to bring their own broomsticks. Son, it's during your first year you'll have flying classes. Vernon explained. If you learn how to fly and behave yourself, your mother and I might give you a flying broomstick for your birthday when you become 12 years old. Okay, Dad, Harry replied and then read the list of required uniforms and materials. Petunia then glossed over it. The uniform hasn't changed from what I remember and I can say the same about some books. She commented. I could expect this from the Transfiguration book since I now know you'll have the same teacher your birth parents had for this. I'm not sure about the other topics since that still might be the case of the new professor's teaching plan being too similar to the previous ones. Defense A. Against the Dark Arts was expected to have different books since Hogwarts never had a same teacher for that topic for more than 1 year during the whole time your birth parents were students therein. Even by their first year there were rumors about a curse making sure things were that way. Mum, Dad, there's something else I find odd. Harry explained. Since I was raised by Muggles, I thought someone would come with the letter to explain things like it happened when my birth mother was accepted into Hogwarts. Harry, your case is probably even more unique than hers. Vernon suggested. Why? She was a Muggle born with a wizard neighbor who told her about it. We already knew about the wizarding world and Hogwarts from even before you were born. Aren't they afraid I'll get lost or something like that? Harry asked. Thanks to your birth mother, I already know how to reach Diagon Alley and platform 9 3/4, Harry. Petunia explained. The school probably figured out I'm all guidance you need. Just answer telling them you agree to attend Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. How do I do that? Harry asked in confusion. They say they expect for my owl but we don't have any. Vernon thought a little about it before answering Harry's question. Get outside and see if the owl that brought your acceptance letter is still around. Maybe it'll send them your reply. If so, I wonder where it'd find food. Harry said. The letter said they'd wait until July 31st for my reply. He did as suggested anyway and did find an owl. Did you bring my Hogwarts letter? Harry asked the owl once he was sure there wasn't any neighbor looking. The owl signaled in affirmative. Will you take them my reply? The owl repeated the signal. In that case, please wait until I write it and give it to you. Minutes later, after the Hogwarts owl took Harry's reply, he and his adoptive parents put on their best clothes and readied themselves to go to Diagon Alley. Harry was made to wear a wig to avoid recognition since the Dursleys were worried about fans or people who'd like to harm him. Dad, where will we first go once we enter the wizarding world? Harry eagerly asked. Gringotts, son, Vernon happily answered. The stores and shops at the wizarding world won't accept Muggle money as payment for anything they're selling, so we'll have to exchange some of ours or wizarding money, and Gringotts is the only place I know it can be. Done. Dad, this Gringotts place you've mentioned is a bank, right? Harry asked as if something had just occurred to him. Yes, Vernon answered, wondering where Harry is coming from with that. Then, is there any chance my birth parents had an account there? Harry asked. Well, James Potter did mention once about a pile of gold he inherited from his family, but I never figured out if he was being serious or not. Vernon explained. I just assumed any bank where they had an account would have contacted us about that by now. Maybe they wouldn't know our address and Headmaster Dumbledore wouldn't tell them. Harry suggested, thinking about how Dumbledore simply left then baby Harry at their doorstep without bothering to see if Harry would be welcomed or even checking on them after then. Vernon Dursley saw the plausibility of his adopted son's theory. Well, we can ask once we get there. Harry and his adoptive parents then took the subway to London, where they found the Leaky Cauldron, a pub that serves as a gateway between the wizarding world and the Muggle one. Being a wizard, Harry immediately saw the pub. While the Dursleys only saw it once Harry pointed it to them. Once they got in there, they were greeted by a man Petunia immediately recognized as Tom the bartender from when the Evanses were formally introduced to the wizarding world. May I help you? Tom asked them. The Dursleys said they wanted to go to Gringotts and Tom used his wand to open a brick wall to Diagon Alley. Harry made a pointy. Oh, remember the bricks Tom tapped with his wand. As they walked towards Diagon Alley, Petunia couldn't help but be amazed at the sight after all those years. Wow, it looks the same as I remember from coming here whenever we came to buy Lily's supplies, she commented. Well, I've lived at Privet Drive for longer than I remember and I never saw anything change there either. Harry commented in reply. Vernon and Petunia were shocked that a magical place like the one where they were could be compared to normal and dull Privet Drive. Well, that means you can tell us where to buy stuff for Harry's education, Vernon suggested. Harry then spotted something that caught his attention more than anything else in Diagon Alley, a broomstick shop. Dad, we've already discussed that, Harry. Vernon lectured him. You're a first-year student and, as such, you're not allowed your own broomstick while at Hogwarts. They then went to Gringotts, where they learned James Potter was putting it mildly about having just one pile of gold. The bulk of the inheritance cannot be touched until Harry becomes an adult or a magical guardian authorizes a withdrawal and there's a stipend for his education that'll become available once Harry reaches the age of 11. Speaking of magical guardians, they also learned what became of the one James and Lily had appointed to their son. So that's what happened to Sirius Black. Vernon mused. Did you know him, Dad? Harry asked, horrified his family had been friends with a murderer. He was the best man at your birth parents' marriage and also your godfather, Harry. Petunia answered in tears. We had no news of him ever since James and Lily ceased communications with us to go into hiding. Fearing the worst, we thought you'd better not hear about him. Well, I certainly did not expect to learn that about him. Vernon grunted in disgust. The wizards should have told us about it in the trial. I'd love to have seen that monster being convicted. Well, Mr. Dursley, if missing the trial is all that bothers you, there's no need to worry for there was no trial. Griphook replied with usual goblin lack of politeness. Did he plead guilty? Vernon asked in shock. No, Griphook answered. The Ministry of Magic was so sure of his guilt they saw no need for a trial and simply sent him to Azkaban without bothering to listen to whatever he had to say on his defense. Is there anything I can do about that? Harry asked. Harry, Petunia exclaimed in shock. Mum, this Sirius Black fellow might be innocent and I'd hate myself if I could do something about it and yet I didn't. Harry explained. Griphook decided to answer Harry's question. Mr. Potter, you might send a request to the Department of Magical Law Enforcement for the records of your godfather's case or go to the ministry to make the request in person. If you still believe Sirius Black might be innocent after reading those records, you might request for a trial on the grounds that you were a victim of a crime attributed to Black and your birth parents were killed as a result of said crime. Oh, yeah, I remember reading about it in a book of wizarding law. Harry commented. Thank you, Mr. Griphook. You're welcome, Mr. Potter. Griphook replied. Vernon then exchanged the muggle money he brought to Gringotts for this and then Harry and the Dursleys left Gringotts. Where do we go now, Dad? Harry eagerly asked. We'll buy you a trunk. Vernon answered. Each student of Hogwarts uses one to carry their stuff. How do you know it didn't change, Dad? Harry asked, not liking the idea of carrying a trunk. It most likely hasn't changed since everything else so far seems to be the same. Vernon dismissively commented. They then went to the trunk shop, where they opted for a trunk with 3 compartments. One for clothes, one for books, and one for other materials. They also had the initial engraved on it. After that, they went to Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions. Welcome to Madame Malkin's. Madame Malkin said. Does your son need Hogwarts robes? She asked. Yes, and he'd like to have a set of casual robes and one for formal parties. Vernon answered, wanting to show off. As she recognized Harry Potter by seeing the scar despite his wig, she eagerly told him to stand next to a taller boy. Are you going to Hogwarts as well? The boy asked. Yes. Harry answered. My name is Percy Weasley. The taller boy introduced himself. I'm starting my 5th year at Hogwarts and I was just made Gryffindor prefect. I'm buying special prefect robes. And you? I'm Harry Potter and I'm starting my 1st year at Hogwarts. Harry replied. I still have no idea of where I'll be sorted. Really? Percy was shocked Harry didn't have similar hair to his father. Like the wizarding world widely believed. He then tried to think of a way to address this without sounding rude. You don't exactly look like as expected. Well, I'm wearing a wig to avoid being recognized by people who'd harm me. Harry explained and Percy nodded at this. Meanwhile, Vernon and Petunia were acquainting themselves with the Weasleys. So, 2 of your sons have already graduated? Vernon asked. What do they do for a living? I'm still not familiar enough with this world to know what to expect of Harry's future once he completes his education. Our eldest one, Bill, works at Gringotts Egyptian branch. And Charlie works at a dragon preserve in Romania. Arthur explained, happy to have met Muggles. Dragons? Petunia Dursley asked in shock. That sounds dangerous. And it is. Molly Weasley replied in agreement. I'd rather if the both of them took jobs at the ministry like Arthur. But banks are also respectable workplaces. Vernon replied. Whatever Bill Weasley do, for Gringotts must be really important if they bothered to transfer people from England to do it instead of hiring people already living in Egypt. He really does. Arthur conceded. He's a curse breaker. Gringotts sends teams of curse breakers to raid pyramids in search for treasures. After all treasures and curses are removed from a pyramid, it's open for tourism. Do you mean all those tall of ancient Egyptian treasures protected by curses are real? Vernon asked in shock. Either real or based on real stories, Mr. Dursley. Arthur explained. What about your other children, Mr. Weasley? Vernon politely asked. Do they also attend Hogwarts? You can call me Arthur, Mr. Dursley. Arthur replied. About my other children, Ginny will only start next year, Ron will be a year mate of your son. And the twins Fred and George are starting their 3rd year. All who had already been sorted were placed at Gryffindor. Where do expect Harry will be sorted? We expect Gryffindor as well. But we'll be relieved for as long as he isn't sorted into Slytherin. Petunia explained. The Weasley children nodded in approval. In their eyes, any house, even Hufflepuff, would be better than Slytherin. And, if I may call you Arthur then you may call me Vernon. Harry and Percy then showed up. Is everything ready, son? Vernon asked. Yes, Dad. Percy. The same thing with me, Father. Let's go to Flourish and Blots, Harry. Vernon proclaimed. Are you coming with us, Weasleys? Sure, Arthur cheerfully answered. At Flourish and Blots, Vernon and Petunia gleefully approached the counter. May I help you? Yes, Vernon politely answered. Our boy is starting Hogwarts this year and needs the books mentioned at this list. Certainly, sir. I'll gather them. The clerk eagerly replied and then left for the books. While they waited, Harry and the Dursleys noticed the Weasleys were looking through the section of second-hand books. In other times, the Dursleys would have sneered at the Weasleys for this but they made an effort through the years to make themselves better parents to their son. They became polite enough to avoid this even if they'd still rather associate themselves to people of a higher standing. Later, as Harry and the Dursleys placed the books at his new trunk, Ronald Weasley noticed the initials. Harry, if your family's name is Dursley, why is the last initial on your trunk a P? Before Harry said anything, Vernon quickly answered. P is for the family he was born into. What happened to Ronald? His mother shouted. Those things are too personal. They don't have to tell if they don't want to. I'm terribly sorry about my son. Apology accepted, ma'am, Vernon replied. Well, if you excuse us, we have already finished buying everything we came here for and we need to go home. Arthur politely said, see you at platform 9 3/4. After the Weasleys left, Harry and the Dursleys went to Ollivander's. You came too soon, Mr. Potter, Ollivander stated as soon as he saw Harry. How did you know it was me? And what do you mean by too soon? Harry asked in confusion. I have this ability to recognize people and I mean to. I can't sell wands to anyone under the age of 11, no matter how close to finally reaching that age you are. Ollivander explained. We'll be back later then. Vernon Dursley replied. And now, Dad? Harry asked. Where are we going? Home. Vernon answered. We've already bought everything you need for your first year at Hogwarts except for a wand, which we can't buy before you become 11 years old anyway. Actually, Dad, I'd like to get back to Flourish and Blots. Harry replied. There seems to be more to wizarding laws and customs than that book you gave me years before suggests. Oh, And we'll also need an owl, Petunia commented. Meanwhile, the Weasleys were going back to their home, the burrow. I know what that P stands for, Percy commented. It's for Potter. The other Weasleys were shocked. Percy, you're not saying that boy was Harry Potter, are you? Molly Weasley asked. His hair wasn't like James Potter's. It was a wig just in case some Death Eater showed up, Mother. Percy explained. Did you see the scar, Percy? Ron eagerly asked. You will not ask him about that. Their mother angrily replied. I never asked for it, Mother. Percy pompously stated. Did he show it without asking? Fred or George? Who can tell with those twins eagerly asked. We never discussed the scar, Percy answered. Then how can you be sure he wasn't pranking you? Ron asked. I don't believe Harry Potter would hide the mark that makes him so famous. First, he's not the twins. Second, everybody knows Harry Potter was sent to live with Muggle relatives who already knew about magic. Which would explain him coming to buy school materials with them but without a Hogwarts professor guiding them like they guide Muggleborns and their parents. Third, the boy who lived needs special safety precautions while outside Hogwarts. Percy stated. Now that I think about it, once he's sorted into Gryffindor, I'll need to pay special attention to him given my responsibilities as a Gryffindor prefect. When Amelia Bones received a letter stating it was from Harry Potter requesting to see the records of Sirius Black's case, she was shocked as she hasn't heard of Black ever since the Ministry made a public announcement about the heinous crimes he was sent to Azkaban for. She didn't even hear of his trial, which she'd like to see even if she still wasn't head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement back then, just for sheer curiosity for what a Death Eater like Sirius Black would say. She was even more shocked when she found out the reason she never heard about Sirius Black's trial. He was never allowed one. Witnesses might have heard Black confessing but he should have been taken into questioning. She then ordered Sirius Black to be brought to questioning. In Azkaban, Sirius Black was surprised that someone other than the Minister of Magic, who was required to check upon the prisoners once a year as part of the duties that come with the job, asked for him. Azkaban maximum security inmate Sirius Orion Black, by order of Amelia Bones, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, you're hereby ordered to be taken to the Ministry of Magic for questioning regarding the deaths of James and Lily Potter, Peter Pettigrew and 12 Muggles. Auror Kingsley Shacklebolt announced. Do you have any questions? Has this Amelia Bones been the H.E.A.D. of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement ever since Bartemius Crouch left the post? Sirius Black asked, surprising Auror Shacklebolt by showing more sanity than expected from someone exposed to Dementors for almost 10 years. That surprise didn't keep Shacklebolt from answering, yes. Then why only now I'm being allowed a chance to plead my innocence? Sirius asked in confusion. Ha! Auror Shacklebolt scoffed. You, innocent. You confessed. Did the Dementors make you forget it? In fact, the only reason Director Bones is bothering to hear you after being aware you weren't allowed a trial is that you've never been officially questioned and she believes confessions need this sort of official confirmation. Personally, if you really have any sort of remorse for what you did to James, Lily and Peter, I believe you should just confirm your guilt instead of trying to waste her time with pleas of innocence. She can't be bribed like those who pretend to believe in those Death Eaters who pleaded the imperious. To Shacklebolt's further surprise, Sirius Black made no attempts to resist and or escape during the whole journey to the Ministry, where they heard some people muttering in wonder about why'd anyone bother bringing such a dangerous and treacherous Death Eater back to the Ministry rather than letting him rot in Azkaban, where he deserves. With protection from Auror Kingsley Shacklebolt and John Dawlish, Amelia Bones started her questioning of Sirius Black. Sirius Black, in name of the Ministry of Magic, I'd like to apologize for failing to notice this miscarriage of justice until now. Apology accepted. And where's Harry? Is he all right? Shacklebolt and Dawlish didn't know what bothered them the most. That Amelia Bones would apologize to the likes of Sirius Black, or that Black would have the gall to act like he cared about his godson. He's where no Death Eater can reach him, and that's all I'm telling you until your case is solved. Amelia Bones sternly told, and then started questioning. Sirius Orion Black, did you betray James and Lily Potter to he who must not be named? I might as well have. He sadly replied. I don't want ambiguous answers, Black. She stated. Witnesses claim to have heard you saying the deaths of James and Lily Potter were your fault. What have you done to make you consider those deaths your fault? I convinced them to switch secret keepers. Sirius replied, looking even sadder. I should have stayed the secret keeper. It was my fault. Amelia Bones and the Aurors were shocked at this. If there was a switch of secret keepers, why didn't Albus Dumbledore inform it? She asked. Because he didn't know, Sirius answered. How could he not know about the switch of secret keepers if he was the caster of the Fidelius charm in this case? She asked. A Fidelius charm placed on a home can be cancelled and replaced by one cast by anyone living in it without knowledge from the previous charm's caster. Sirius explained. In that case, who was the secret keeper who betrayed the Potters? Amelia Bones asked. Peter Pettigrew. Sirius answered, causing outrage among his questioners. Shacklebolt drew his wand. Black, I knew you were a two-faced backstabber, but trying to blame your most heinous crime on a dead person you killed is a new low even for you. I didn't kill Peter Pettigrew. Sirius shouted. He used that explosion and left that finger behind to fake his death. Stop. Shacklebolt. Amelia quickly shouted. Regardless of how we might feel about hearing people believed to have died heroic deaths being accused of grave crimes. If Sirius Black wants to defend himself from a mass murder charge by claiming one of the victims faked his death and was the real culprit, it's not up to us to decide if he's lying or not. She then resumed the questioning. Sirius Black, if Peter Pettigrew was the real betrayer, why was he heard shouting at you for the treason? He was putting an act to mislead the witnesses and whoever listened to them. Sirius explained. If Peter Pettigrew didn't die from that explosion, how did he flee the crime scene without being noticed? She asked. He turned himself into a rat. Sirius answered. Did you see him transforming that night? She asked in shock. Well, no. Then what makes you sure he did so in order to escape? Amelia Bones asked. I recon. Ized his Animagus form among the other rats. He explained. How could you already know Peter Pettigrew was an Animagus if he wasn't registered? Amelia asked as she had checked records of all wizards involved in the crimes Sirius Black had been charged with. Sirius hesitated before answering. James and I helped him. Care to elaborate? Back when we were students of Hogwarts, James Potter and I became Animagi and helped him. Sirius explained. What were your forms? She asked, now paying even more attention to the dictation quill and the parchment where it was writing. I'm a dog, James was a stag and Peter Pettigrew is a rat. Sirius answered while showing anger at the last part. Mr. Black, even if you're found innocent of the crimes you were originally sent to Azkaban for, you'll be punished for this. She officially stated. Or Shacklebolt, keep your wand ready to stop him should he try to assume his Animagus form. Or Dawlish, bring magic Animagus restraints to prevent the suspect from transforming. Sirius Black, is there anyone else who knows about the three of you being Animagi? Yes, Remus Lupin. And about the switch of secret keepers? There's not anyone else in the know. Not even Remus. Sirius Black, do you have anything else you'd like to say before this questioning is over? She asked. Yes. How will you be able to hold the trial? Fudge wasn't willing to give me one the last time he inspected Azkaban and I pleaded. Don't worry. He was easy to convince as soon as I made it clear he's got nothing to lose regardless of where the truth is, if you're found guilty. We'd be just eliminating doubts from Harry Potter's mind. If you're found innocent, he'll not be blamed for this miscarriage of justice since he wasn't the Minister of Magic back when you were sent to Azkaban without a trial. Hearing that Harry Potter doubts his supposed guilt made Sirius Black's day. He gladly accepted the restraints and was taken to a ministry cell. Mean, ill and unusually furious Albus Dumbledore returned to Hogwarts' staff meeting room. The teachers were shocked by seeing Dumbledore as anything other than cheerful. Albus, what's wrong? Minerva McGonagall asked. Amelia Bones learned Sirius Black wasn't allowed a trial and she decided to change that. Dumbledore explained. The professors were shocked. Why would anyone bother giving a trial to someone who confessed? Muggle Studies Professor Charity Burbage asked. Amelia believes in formalities, Charity. Dumbledore explained. She believes Black should have been taken into questioning back then. Knowing Black as I unfortunately do, he's probably trying to lie his way out of Azkaban. Potions Master Severus Snape muttered. What did he say? I don't know, Severus. Dumbledore sadly answered. I'm not allowed to until the trial. But you're the chief warlock of the Wizengamot. Professor McGonagall gasped. I'm also a witness in Black's case. Dumbledore explained. I cannot act as chief warlock in this case or my testimony won't be admissible and I'm afraid Black will walk away if I don't testify against him. Headmaster, aren't you over-glorifying yourself? Snape asked. An OYED at how the wizarding world seemed to act as Dumbledore was its center. I wish I was, Severus. Dumbledore sadly replied. If Black manages to retract the confession, my testimony will be the only thing Black cannot counter-argue. Several witnesses heard Peter Pettigrew shouting at Black for his betrayal. Charms Professor Phileas Flitwick exclaimed. They also saw him pointing his wand at poor Peter. That's a third-hand testimony, Phileas. Dumbledore sadly explained. All we have are ministry officers stating some muggles heard Peter Pettigrew shouting at Black for betraying James and Lily Potter. Being muggles, they've already been obliviated and thus unable to testify, not to mention that, since Peter Pettigrew never stated his reasons to believe Sirius Black was the secret keeper, Black can claim Peter was mistaken. Quote, Black killed Peter Pettigrew and 12 muggles with a blasting hex, Headmaster. Snape stated. Certainly there's no way he can deny it after the Aurors who arrested him checked his wand for spells back then. Seeing Headmaster Dumbledore's reaction to this last comment, realization started to hit him. They checked his wand and Peter Pettigrew's as required by Auror procedure rules, didn't they? He was now worried. Unfortunately not, Severus. Dumbledore said with even more sadness. Black might claim Peter accidentally killed himself and the muggles. Who can prove Black did anything other than a shield charm to protect himself from the explosion? Now the teaching staff was worried. They were now able to see Black walking away with the Mass M. Or even if he's still convicted for betraying the Potters. Before anyone had a chance to reply, N. Owl gave Professor Flitwick a letter. Anything wrong, Phileas? Headmaster Dumbledore asked. It's from the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. The Charms Master exclaimed. They want my expert testimony. Wonderful, the headmaster exclaimed. Now you can try to find out what Black said on his defense so we'll be able to neutralize his lies. In that case, Headmaster, excuse me but I need to go there to give my testimony. He said. Goodbye. After Professor Flitwick left, Headmaster Dumbledore talked to the others. Now, we have another cause of concern. Tomorrow, Harry Potter will be 11 years old and needs someone to guide him through Diagon Alley to buy supplies. Can't the brat's own caregivers do it, Headmaster? Snape angrily asked. I wouldn't trust the Dursleys for this task, Severus. Professor McGonagall replied with her usual stern tone. You certainly remember Lily's sister, don't you? Now Severus Snape was worried. There were always two things he was sure in life. The brat's aunt would always be the same stupid muggle who hates everything magical and out of ordinary. And the brat would grow up to be the same arrogant bully his father was. If Harry Potter was raised by his Aunt Petunia, then one of those things would be wrong. Well, I certainly remember her. Then, Severus, would you mind being Harry's guide as he goes through Diagon Alley to buy school supplies? Headmaster Dumbledore cheerfully asked. Headmaster, if you don't mind, I believe I should be the one to guide him. Professor McGonagall suggested. After all, he's probably going to be sorted at my house. Excellent suggestion, Minerva. Dumbledore approved and then handed her a key. This key is to the vault where Harry's parents deposited his trust fund. He'll need it. The key was with you and not with the people raising the Potter boy. Snape asked in shock. Did they even know there's an inheritance waiting for the brat at Gringotts? How could they not? Dumbledore asked in confusion. Everyone knows the noble and most ancient house of Potter is one of the wealthiest families in Wizarding Britain. Everyone in the Wizarding Britain, Headmaster, but the Dursleys are muggles who made a point to stay as isolated from the wizarding world as muggles allowed to know about it can. Snape replied. It'd not surprise me if they thought Potter had nothing to inherit from his parents. The thought of Harry Potter not knowing his family's standing in the wizarding world made Minerva McGonagall appalled. She knew a letter wouldn't explain everything but only now it clicked on her it might mean Harry not knowing what it meant being a Potter in the wizarding world. There's no need to worry. Dumbledore calmly stated. Harry and the Dursleys wouldn't be allowed to withdraw money from Harry's trust fund vault until he became 11 anyway. And, Minerva, do you mind if Hagrid goes with you? I intended to have him go alone, but with the news about Black I believe I need someone who can keep silent. Harry doesn't need to know his parents were betrayed by someone they trusted the most. Minerva McGonagall thought it'd be a bad idea sending Hagrid alone to introduce a soon-to-be first-year Hogwarts student, but said nothing. In the next morning, the two of them arrived at 4 Privet Drive and Minerva McGonagall rang the doorbell. Vernon answered. May I help you? Yes, Mr. Dursley. Professor McGonagall answered. I'm Professor Minerva McGonagall and this is Rubeus Hagrid. May we get in? Recognizing the name, Minerva McGonagall, from Harry's acceptance letter, Vernon allowed them in. Hagrid was so tall he had to squeeze himself in. Who's there, Vernon? Mrs. Dursley asked. Professor McGonagall and a Mr. Rubeus Hagrid, Petunia. Vernon answered and then turned his attention to the two guests. Is there any problem regarding my son attending Hogwarts? Son? She asked in confusion. I was under the impression the only child residing here was your nephew. Petunia and I formally adopted him as our son. Vernon cheerfully explained. And I'm proud to say we're doing a fine job raising him. While Professor McGonagall was shocked at this, Hagrid couldn't help but express joy. I'm glad to hear this, he exclaimed. I thought he'd not be happy living with Muggles. Glad I was wrong. Quote, well, Mr. Dursley, in response to your question, we're just here to guide your son through Diagon Alley, like explained at his acceptance letter. She said like it was obvious. There was no mention in that letter about a member of Hogwarts staff guiding Harry. Vernon Dursley replied. Impossible, she exclaimed. Hogwarts' magical addressing system makes sure all Muggle-raised students are informed there'd be a guide to come by the time they turn 11 years old. How do they know when a student born to magical parents is raised by non-magical ones? Vernon asked in reply. Does it tell when the Muggles raising the Hogwarts student to be already know how to reach Diagon Alley and platform 9 3/4? Minerva admitted to herself it never occurred to her students raised by Muggles who already knew about Hogwarts and the wizarding world wouldn't be informed about guides. Or that the magical addressing system wouldn't tell when a student born to magical parents would be raised by Muggles. Well, Mr. Dursley, I'm sorry if showing up without proper announcement has disrupted any plans for the celebration of Harry Potter's birthday party. But he still needs his school materials. Petunia intervened. Actually, we've already bought everything except for his wand, which he couldn't have until today. Hagrid and Professor McGonagall were shocked at this. How did you do so if Mr. Potter's trust fund couldn't be used until today? She asked. We exchanged some of our own money at Gringotts, Professor McGonagall. Vernon answered, shocking her even more. She was now certain Professor Snape was right about the Dursleys having no clue to how much money Harry's parents had. Dursley, did you really take Harry to Diagon Alley? Hagrid asked. How come it wasn't publicly known? I'd expect his return to the wizarding world to become some sort of media circus. We had him wear a wig for safety purposes. Vernon replied. Well, with those Death Eaters who lied their way out of Azkaban I can understand. Hagrid reluctantly said after thinking it over. Well, Mr. Dursley, Harry won't need a disguise this time, Professor McGonagall stated. She was thinking about herself as a protection, but Vernon relied more on the fact Hagrid could easily tower over him. If not for the fact Vernon Dursley wasn't a man to let others intimidate him at his own home. He'd scared just at seeing Hagrid. I see, he replied. Well, I believe we have time to go to Diagon Alley, buy Harry a wand and then return to his party. I hope he won't miss me. Actually, Mr. Dursley, wizarding law is quite clear on that, Professor McGonagall explained. The wizard or witch who becomes the wand's user must be at the place where it's bought when it's bought. In that case, Professor McGonagall, I'll go call Harry. Vernon replied. He must be reading one of the school books by now. May I offer you something to drink? Petunia asked. I'd like some water, please. Professor McGonagall replied. Something stronger for me, please. Hagrid added. Later on, Vernon introduced Harry to the visitors. Harry, these are Hogwarts Deputy Headmistress Minerva McGonagall and Rubeus Hagrid, whose place among Hogwarts staff remain unknown to me. Vernon said. I'm keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Hagrid explained. Anyway, Professor McGonagall, groundskeeper Hagrid, this is my son Harry James Dursley Potter. Vernon proudly replied. Nice to meet you both. Harry politely replied. Dursley. Hagrid ND Professor McGonagall asked in confusion. Well, the Dursley part of my name will probably not be officially recognized in the wizarding world since it was from a Muggle adoption, but the Muggle woe. RLD officially knows me as Harry James Dursley Potter ever since my current parents adopted me. Harry explained. Well, Mr. Potter, you know your true parents were James and Lily Potter, right? She asked out of concern for the memories of two of her former best students. Yes, and I'm sure they're glad a loving family took me in after they died to protect me. Harry replied. Professor McGonagall seemed to be satisfied with that answer. Well, Mr. Potter, James and Lily Potter left a trust fund to pay for your education, she said as she handed Harry a key. Oh, yes, Harry replied. The goblin said something about Headmaster Dumbledore keeping the key for me. Please tell him I appreciate his concern, but I'd rather to keep it or let my parents use it. Minerva McGonagall wasn't sure if it was a good idea to trust the Dursleys with Harry's money, but had no choice by then. While Petunia stayed home to prepare everything for the party, Vernon, Harry, Hagrid and Professor McGonagall went to Gringotts to pick money to pay for the wand and then some. Harry then offered to take money to compensate for what Vernon and Petunia spent on his other school materials, but Vernon refused, earning some degree of respect from Professor McGonagall. As they walked towards Ollivander's wand shop, Harry shocked Professor McGonagall and groundskeeper Hagrid one more time. Did anyone hear news on my godfather's trial? Your godfather? She asked, still recovering from shock. Yes, he answered. The Department of Magical Law Enforcement sent me an apology letter for not holding a trial back when my godfather Sirius Black was arrested. I want to know if there's finally a trial date. Mr. Potter, after how he betrayed your parents to he who must not be named, you should be asking them in Istry to skip the trial and give Black the Dementor's kiss. She commented in reply. How barbaric. Vernon stated. Not about the penalty. You may hang that Sirius Black character if his guilt is Hurley confirmed, but he should be allowed a trial. A trial for an obviously guilty person is a waste of time. Hagrid grunted. They then went to the shop, where Harry and Vernon noticed the suspicious way Hagrid held his umbrella after Ollivander mentioned his wand. Apparently, Hagrid was expelled from Hogwarts for something so serious that, as additional punishment, he had his wand snapped and as forbidden from doing magic ever again. To Harry and Vernon's dismay, the wand chooses the wizard, and it took a long time until a wand chose Harry. Even worse, Ollivander stated the phoenix feather. That the core of Harry's holly wand cores can be made of phoenix feathers, unicorn hairs and dragon heartstrings. Other materials can be used, but Ollivander said he only used those three. Was Aid came from a phoenix that gave a feather that was used to make the core of Voldemort's wand. Are you trying to scare him? Vernon angrily asked. What's the big deal about their wand cores coming from the same phoenix? If the two wands are ever used against each other, it'll cause them to regurgitate their last spells, interrupting the battle. Ollivander answered, making Vernon interested. Is this still important? Vernon asked in reply. What became of that wand after that night? Nobody knows. If I knew the terrible things it'd be used for. Ollivander replied with a pang of remorse. You sold him his wand? Vernon asked in shock. I've been selling wands to practically everyone who reached the age of 11 ever since I started. Ollivander explained. Then, Mr. Ollivander, do you also sell stuff to help wizards to carry their wands, or are they supposed to keep them on their pockets? Vernon asked. After buying the wand and a holster, they went to a pet shop where Hagrid bought an owl and gave it to Harry as a birthday gift. Thank you, Mr. Hagrid. No need to be so formal, Harry. Hagrid replied. You probably don't remember, but it was I who took you to the Dursleys by motorcycle. The flying motorcycle? Harry asked, shocking Hagrid. How did you? I had a dream about it, Hagrid. Harry answered. Excuse me, but how do we take the owl back home? Vernon asked. Owls aren't among the sort of birds people keep in the Muggle world, and the invitees for Harry's birthday party will probably have arrived by the time we get back home. No worry, Dursley, Hagrid replied. I'll send it to you tomorrow. With everything clarified, Harry and Vernon went back to the Muggle world, where Harry enjoyed the party, and Hagrid and Professor McGonagall went back to Hogwarts. I trust everything went well with Harry Potter, the headmaster said. Actually, Mr. Potter's wand was all he still needed, Professor McGonagall explained. They had already bought the uniform and other materials. It seems our magical addressing system didn't see Mr. Potter as someone who needed a guide. This was not the worst, Headmaster, Hagrid added. The Department of Magical Law Enforcement told Harry about Black, and Harry believes the trial to be a good idea. Then I'd better make sure my testimony gets Black convicted, Headmaster Dumbledore sadly replied. If at least Lius told me what he was asked to confirm. Please review. Sorry if Hagrid doesn't speak like in the books. I'm not sure of how to write the way he speaks, so I'm not really trying much. Hogwarts. Chapter 3. Hogwarts. Hogwarts Headmaster Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore didn't know what to think of the recent developments. Amelia Bones wouldn't listen to his argument about why allowing Sirius Black a trial instead of letting him rot in Azkaban would be a waste of time. The Dursleys were treating Harry better than expected, which he was relieved since he only left Harry under their care for lack of choice. Harry does know about Sirius Black and believes he should have been allowed a trial, which Dumbledore considered a bad thing since he expected to use Harry to ask the Ministry to deny Black a trial, and now Lucius Malfoy had called for an emergency session of the Wizengamot, and Dumbledore was sure it had something to do with Sirius Black. Well, if Malfoy hoped to rig the trial on Black's favor, he'd have something else coming. Order, order. The Minister of Magic, Cornelius Oswald Fudge, announced. The Wizengamot is on emergency session ordered by Lord Lucius Malfoy, head of the House of Malfoy. Lord Malfoy, you have the word. Thank you, Minister. Lucius Malfoy politely replied. Lords and ladies of the Wizengamot, I've called this emergency session for one reason. Sirius Orion Black. This declaration drew gasps from everyone except for an unsurprised Chief Warlock. Considering all those years he spent having Dementors as companions, I believe he should be thoroughly examined by mind healers to be sure he'll understand the gravity of his situation when he's finally tried. Albus Dumbledore quickly raised his wand. Is there anything you wish to say, Chief Warlock Dumbledore? Minister Fudge asked. Yes, Cornelius, Dumbledore calmly answered. I'm afraid that, given enough time, Sirius Black will be able to make up some story to help him get away with his crimes. Therefore, we should avoid this or anything else that would delay his trial. Headmaster, you shouldn't be so sure of his guilt. Lucius Malfoy intervened. The trial hasn't even begun. And there shouldn't even be one. Dumbledore replied. I'm disappointed Amelia doesn't understand trials for obviously guilty people are a waste of time. Then we're even, Headmaster. Amelia Bones replied. I'm disappointed you don't understand investigating a murder case, regardless of how sure everyone is about the main suspect being guilty, is never a waste of time. I agree with Madam Bones, Headmaster. Lady Augusta Longbottom intervened. Once we start convicting people without allowing them a trial, how can anyone tell how many innocents will be sent to Azkaban? Lucius Malfoy NLY wants to give his wife's cousin enough time for him to fabricate a defense and use insanity as an excuse to justify any lies from his questioning that becomes proven as such. Albus Dumbledore pleaded. Agreeing to his request will only help a criminal to go free. Regardless of Lord Malfoy's reasons to make this request, I agree Sirius Black will need to be able to give coherent answers and, therefore, I believe Lord Malfoy's request should be granted. Lord Greengrass stated and several other lords and ladies agreed. In the end, those in favor of granting Lucius Malfoy's request won by a landslide. Time skipped to September 1st, 1991. At King's Cross Station, there were considerably more people than in most days. The reason for this was that it was the day Hogwarts students had to board the Hogwarts Express to go to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Among those students was Harry James Dursley Potter, who was driven there by his foster parents, Vernon Dursley and Petunia Dursley née Evans. Mum, how are we supposed to reach platform 9 3/4? Harry asked. We run through the wall between platforms 9 and 10, Harry, and I've already told you before. Petunia answered with an annoyed tone. I still can't believe that. Harry replied. I know, she said. I was skeptical myself before Lily's first time. Let's run together. Not so fast, Vernon intervened. Is every school material in your trunk well tight? Yes, Dad. Then let's go, Vernon Dursley said, and then they, against Harry's and Vernon's fears, crossed the wall. Look, Harry exclaimed. That sign reads, Platform 9 3/4. And it's not made of plastic like the others. Artificially made materials aren't up to the taste of wizards and witches, Harry. Petunia explained. In fact, they don't use anything electronic other than radios at Hogwarts. Even then you'd be hard-pressed to find any station you could hear from the Muggle world. That YUN. Dad gave me this non-digital wristwatch, right? Harry asked as he showed it. That's right, son, Vernon replied. And, Harry, when you come home for the Christmas holidays, will you bring me some those chocolate frogs I've heard about? He asked with water at his mouth. Vernon. Petunia Dursley scolded her husband. Don't worry, Dad, I'll get you some, Harry replied. Vernon and Petunia then helped him to place his trunk inside the train. Whatever spell might make it easier to do this, I hope to learn soon. Don't forget to write, Harry. Petunia asked with tears at her eyes. Having arrived early, Harry easily found an empty compartment and then started reading a book. A few minutes later, a student wearing Gryffindor robes entered. Sorry for interrupting, he said. Do you mind if I stay here? Not at all, Harry replied. Thank you. My name is Cormac McLaggen and I'm a second-year Gryffindor student. The Gryffindor student identified himself. And you? I'm Harry Potter, a first-year student who has yet to be sorted. Nice to meet you, Harry replied out of politeness. Right, McLaggen sarcastically replied. Harry Potter is supposed to be an orphan. If you're him, who are those people I've seen you call Mum and Dad before you entered the train? My Uncle Vernon and my Aunt Petunia adopted me after my birth parents' deaths and I consider them my parents. Harry explained, annoyed at McLaggen's attitude. Sorry if I offended you, Potter. McLaggen replied. It's okay. Harry accepted the apology, deciding to give McLaggen another chance. So, Potter, do you already know where you'll be sorted? No, I was told people who know how it works like to keep it a secret to surprise first years. Harry explained. Well, I only hope it's not Slytherin given what I've heard about that house. Agreed, Potter. Cormac McLaggen replied. Anything is better than being a slimy snake. Harry then noticed Cormac's broomstick. Do you play for Gryffindor's Quidditch team? Not yet, but I hope to become the new Seeker. Cormac explained. I'd rather be a keeper, but Gryffindor's current one, Oliver Wood, who also happens to be the team's captain, is good for the position and will remain a Hogwarts student for this and the next 2 years. The only opening is for Seeker. The last one, Charlie Weasley, graduated last year. I've heard he went to Romania to work with dragons after graduation. Harry commented. That surprised everyone who knew him. Cormac replied. Everyone expected him to play for a professional Quidditch team, but how did you know that? I thought you grew up isolated from the wizarding world until it was time for you to attend Hogwarts. My parents and I met the Weasleys when we went to Diagon Alley. Harry explained. Quote, my parents wanted some ideas of things I could do for a living after I graduate and then asked the Weasleys about the jobs held by their already graduated sons. Honestly, I think I'd rather be a curse breaker than handle dragons. You could be a professional Quidditch player, Harry. Cormac suggested. Your father, James Potter played as chaser for Gryffindor and was good enough to earn a spot in our trophy room. I'll think about that, Harry replied. Meanwhile, Ronald Weasley showed up. Oh, hello, Harry. Mind if I sit here? Not at all, Ron. Harry replied with a smile. Ron, may I introduce you to Cormac McLaggen? Looking at Cormac's Gryffindor robes and his broom, Ron actually liked meeting him. Sure, he happily exclaimed. My name is Ronald Weasley. He then offered his hand for a handshake. Cormac McLaggen. Cormac replied while accepting the handshake. Is that one of those Nimbus 2000 that recently entered the market? Ron eagerly asked. Exactly. Cormac happily replied. It was a gift from Uncle Tiberius. You must have already heard about him from your father since the both of them work for the Ministry of Magic. Yes, your uncle is a high officer, right? Ron asked and Cormac nodded. The conversation was then interrupted by three boys who, like Harry, had yet to be sorted. The seemingly leader of them was a blonde boy who was visibly shorter than the other two. Then it's true. Harry Potter is attending Hogwarts this year, he stated. Excuse me, Harry interrupted. I'm afraid we haven't been introduced yet. Then, it's time to rectify this. The boy replied with arrogance. My name is Malfoy, Draco Malfoy. The now identified Draco then noticed how Harry was staring at his friends. Oh, and these are Vincent Crabbe and Gregory Goyle. Now, I see you have an odd taste regarding friendships. Nothing against McLaggen despite him being a Gryffindor since he's at least well connected but a Weasley. Look at that, his family is so poor the robes he wears are obviously hand-me-downs from his several brothers. In fact, I think all of them have previously worn this one. Then again, he probably still smells better than the muggle filth you grew up with. Don't talk about my friends or my parents like that, Harry angrily demanded. Parents? An astonished Draco asked. I know your original mother was a mudblood, but for you to consider our relatives as your parents, it shows how much the House of Potter has fallen. It's the noble and most ancient House of Potter, Harry replied. And, while I'm glad your father had the forethought of making sure my godfather would be able to stand trial by the time he has won, I must ask you to either leave or stop insulting my family and friends. It's unclear which factor had the most weight in Draco leaving instead of starting a fight. It could have been that Harry invoked his family's status of noble and most ancient, or that Harry had shown appreciation for something Draco's father had done, or a mix of both. The fact was that Draco and his cronies left without causing any ruckus. I'll let my father know you appreciated his concern. Ron then looked at his pockets. Can you believe this? Scabbers slept through the whole thing. Who's Scabbers? Harry asked. Cormac had the same concerns, but Harry voiced his first. My pet rat, Ron explained. I thought cats, owls and toads were the only pets students were allowed to bring. Cormac commented. We had him for years. Ron replied. He was initially Percy's rat, but Percy no longer wanted him when he gained an owl from my parents as a reward for becoming a prefect. Honestly, my sister, my other brothers and I should have been rewarded for enduring him gloating over the fact. What happened to his toe, Ron? Harry asked out of curiosity. I don't know. Ron shrugged. His paw was already like that by the time we got him. Then a lady with a tray showed up selling sweets. Harry bought licorice wands and some chocolate OGS, and Cormac bought one of each sort of sweet she had, including Bertie Bott's every flavor beans. The two of them then looked at Ron, who simply said, no sweets for me. Mum already made me some lunch. Then he showed some sandwiches. The lady then left. Okay, Cormac said and then helped himself to his licorice wand. Harry then opened one of the frogs and, remembering what Petunia heard Snape telling Lily once, he quickly ate it. Which card did come with the frog, Harry? Agrippa. Bloody hell, Ron exclaimed, shocking the others. Sorry, it's just that Agrippa and Ptolemy are the ONL. Why cards I need to complete my collection. Wanna trade, Harry? I trade a Dumbledore for your Agrippa. Perhaps I'm open to discuss it by the time I get a second Agrippa. Harry replied. Take your time, Ron said. I've got 6 Dumbledores. Quote, Harry, you said you approve Lucius Malfoy's idea regarding the treacherous Sirius Black. An amazed Cormac McLaggen commented. Why do you like anything that helped Black to worm his way out of Azkaban? Sirius Black needs his sanity to be able to answer questions, and I need to know if he's really guilty or not. Harry explained, to the shock of Ron and Cormac. Harry, everybody knows Sirius Black betrayed your family to you-know-who and later murdered Peter Pettigrew and 12 muggles with a single blast. Ron exclaimed. Unless he actually pleads guilty. There's a chance Sirius Black is innocent. Harry replied. Harry, my uncle confided in me that Black expects the Wizengamot to believe Peter Pettigrew faked his death and was the real culprit behind the other crimes. Cormac replied, shocking Ron. What? The Weasley boy asked. My parents told me that Black was crazy, but I didn't expect that. And what makes the Ministry so sure Peter Pettigrew died in that explosion? Harry asked, shocking the others with the fact he's not surprised Black would contest Peter's death. Peter Pettigrew's finger was found at the crime scene, Harry. Ron explained. It was all that was ever found of him. Everyone knows that. What was found of the other people reported as having been killed in that explosion? Harry asked. Charred bodies. AC answered, wondering what point Harry wanted to make. If Peter Pettigrew really died in that explosion, why was there much less of him than of each Muggle killed in that explosion? Harry asked. Ron and Cormac would see the grounds for doubt. Black's only issue was with Peter Pettigrew, Harry. Ron explained. He didn't care about the Muggles. I agree. Cormac added. Sirius Black hate Peter Pettigrew for preventing his escape. How can anyone tell who did what if Sirius Black's and Peter Pettigrew's wands weren't checked for spells? Harry asked. Well, Madam Bones was indeed set at the oars who arrested Sirius Black over this wand-checking issue. Cormac conceded. But, even without that, there's no way Black might be innocent. Well, it's the Wizengamot's duty to sort what Sirius Black is guilty of and what he's not. Harry replied, and the others assented. Later on, after the three of them were leaving the Hogwarts Express and wearing their uniforms, they heard Hagrid calling for the first-year students. I'll see you at the sorting ceremony. Cormac told Harry and Ron. He was about to leave when Ron interrupted him. Cormac, how did you defeat the troll? Which troll? A confused Cormac asked. Didn't you have to wrestle a troll during the sorting ceremony? Ron asked. Realization hit Cormac McLaggen. The twins said that, right. I should have known they were pranking me. Ron angrily muttered as he and Harry walked towards the boats. As the rules regarding the use of the boats established a maximum of 4 people per boat, Harry and Ron shared a boat with a boy named Neville Longbottom and a girl named Hermione Granger. Once Hermione told the boys she's a Muggleborn, Harry asked. What's like only learning about the wizarding world when it's time to attend Hogwarts? Shouldn't you know it yourself, Harry, since you're being raised by Muggles? Ron asked in confusion. Muggles who already knew about magic even before I was born, Ron. Harry explained. My parents started explaining it to me as soon as I told them about one of my early bouts of accidental magic. Your parents? A confused Hermione asked. My birth mother's relatives adopted me and treat me like a son. Harry explained. In that case, it was a shock. Hermione answered. All that time I was wondering why weird stuff kept happening around me. My parents were skeptical about magic when Professor McGonagall showed up, but then she did some magic and they no longer doubted her. It was hard to convince them to let me attend Hogwarts, but they eventually understood I need to learn how to control my magic, and Hogwarts is the world's best magical school. I've already read all books for the term. And you? Me too, Harry uneasily answered. Professor McGonagall guided my family when we went to Diagon Alley to buy supplies. Hermione eagerly said. Who guided yours? That was complicated, Harry explained. Because of my unique situation. Born to a wizarding and raised by Muggles who already knew about the wizarding world, Hogwarts' magical addressing system didn't tell me I'd be offered a guide, and Hogwarts staff failed to notice that, so my parents and I went to Diagon Alley by ourselves and bought everything except for my wand, since the law wouldn't allow me to buy one before I became 11 years old. Then we got a surprise visit from Professor McGonagall and groundskeeper Hagrid. The biggest shock, however, was learning I have a godfather who spent all those years in prison for crimes he was never allowed to be tried for. What? A horrified Hermione asked. How can any government deny such a basic right? Everybody knows Sirius Black is guilty. Ron stated. My dad said the only reason Amelia Bones, head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, bothering to investigate the case wasn't a total waste of time was the discovery about Sirius Black being an unregistered animagus. Onifut? A confused Harry asked. My dad said. 3rd years are taught that during transfiguration classes. Ron explained. Basically, animagi are wizards and witches who acquire the ability to assume an animal form. It's very complicated to become one, so most people don't bother trying, and, with the discovery of Sirius Black being one, his cell must be warded against animagus transformation so he won't use his animal form to escape. Later on, Hagrid led the first years to Deputy Headmistress Minerva McGonagall, who told them about the sorting and how their achievements would earn points and their rule breaking would lose them points. On their way to the Great Hall, they met some of the resident ghosts, including the Fat Friar, the Hufflepuff House ghost, who seemed the only ghost willing to allow Peeves the Poltergeist to attend sorting ceremonies after all the pranks he pulled. The Great Hall has 5 tables. One for the headmaster and the other professors, one for Gryffindor students, one for Hufflepuff students, one for Ravenclaw students, and one for Slytherin students. The students waiting for their turn to be sorted were standing up. Next to the professor's table, there was a stool. Deputy Headmistress Minerva McGonagall then explained that each student to be sorted had to sit on the stool and put on something known as the sorting hat. Then, to the first year's amazement, said hat started singing. After the song, Professor McGonagall started calling for the students in alphabetical order. Harry made a point to notice. Crabbe, Vincent, was sorted into Slytherin. Goyle, Gregory, was also sorted into Slytherin. Granger, Hermione, was sorted into Gryffindor, and Longbottom, Neville, was also sorted into Gryffindor. Neville was so happy he had initially forgotten to take off the sorting hat before rushing towards the Gryffindor table. Malfoy, Draco, was later sorted into Slytherin, and the sorting hat had hardly touched him. Then it was the turn of Potter, Harry. The sorting hat considered Harry a curious case, stating Harry had a potential for greatness that would suit better at Slytherin. Harry explained he already had friends at Gryffindor and was afraid it might end like the friendship between his birth mother and Severus Snape. The sorting hat then placed Harry at Gryffindor, and Harry had yet to understand why he had the impression of hearing the hat laughing at the mention of Snape's wrong crowd. Anyway, he sat next to Cormac McLaggen and noticed Hermione was sitting next to Prefect Percy Weasley and enjoying hearing about the rules. Several names later, Weasley, Ronald, was sorted into Gryffindor, and instead of sitting next to any of his brothers, he sat next to Harry and Cormac. Then, food materialized in front of the students. After they ate, Headmaster Dumbledore announced some warnings. First, he mentioned about the Forbidden Forest being forbidden to all students, and then stared at the Weasley twins while commenting that some students should remember that. He mentioned a Mr. Filch who possessed a list of forbidden items. He also told the students to avoid the 3rd floor corridor if they didn't want a painful death. That's new, Cormac commented. Really? How so? Harry asked. Everyone in the wizarding world knows the Forbidden Forest is full of dangerous creatures, but there's no known reason to believe we might be putting our lives at stake by entering that corridor. In fact, I've attended Hogwarts last year and there wasn't any sort of restriction against students using the 3rd floor corridor. Cormac explained. Ron, your brothers started attending Hogwarts before I did. Have any of them ever mentioned something about that corridor being dangerous? No, Ron dismissively answered. Harry then felt something odd and concluded it came from a professor wearing black robes. Who's that man with the black robes and the weird nose? Oh, that Professor Snape. Cormac explained, shocking Harry. He's the head of Slytherin House and teaches potions, but he'd do anything to teach defense against the dark arts. Snape? Harry asked in wonder. Severus Snape. You know him? Ron asked in shock. My mum said she and my birth mother grew up in the same neighborhood than he did. Harry explaining, surprising Ron and Cormac. She said my birth mother was friends with him until he joined the wrong crowd at Slytherin. She put it mildly by calling it, wrong crowd, Harry. Cormac replied, I was told Severus Snape was a Death Eater but avoided Azkaban because he spied on them for Professor Dumbledore. Harry and Ron were shocked at this. How could a former criminal, especially one who supported Lord Voldemort, teach at a school? After that, the students were told to go to their common rooms. Each house had its own common room. The first years were guided by the prefects, who informed them how to enter their respective common rooms. At Ravenclaw House, one gained access by correctly answering a riddle while each other house had a password. The password, or riddle, was changed from time to time. Please review. A Trial and the Truth. Chapter 4. A Trial and the Truth. In the day after the sorting ceremony, Cormac did show Harry the trophy room with awards earned by James Potter when he played Quidditch for Gryffindor House. Ron Weasley was with them as well and was astonished by the picture of James Potter. Mate, I had already Heard about you looking like your father except for his eyes, but seeing it by myself still surprises me. Ron commented. It surprises me as well, but not as much as the people in photographs moving. Harry replied. But people always move in photographs, Harry. Ron commented in surprise. Not in Muggle photographs, Ron. Harry explained. They stand still in those. Really? A shocked Ron asked. Weird. I thought your father worked with Muggle artifacts, Ron. Cormac commented. Hasn't he ever shown you any Muggle-made newspaper or magazine? No. Meanwhile, at a courtroom inside the Ministry of Magic's headquarters, Sirius Black was finally having a trial. Order. Order. The court is in session. Senior Undersecretary to the Minister Dolores Umbridge announced. We're here for the trial of Sirius Orion Black. Being witnesses themselves, Chief Warlock Albus Dumbledore and Minister of Magic Cornelius Fudge are not allowed to preside it. In their place, Acting Chief Witch Augusta L. Longbottom and yours truly Senior Undersecretary Dolores Umbridge are presiding. Also presiding as head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement Amelia Bones. Bring the defendant in. Everyone was watching Sirius Black being brought to the courtroom. For safety purposes, Sirius Black was chained at a chair. Petunia Dursley, who was there to watch the trial, was shocked at Sirius Black's current looks. She had only seen him once when he and the Potters comforted her for the loss of her unborn son, and seeing how much he changed for them would probably give her nightmares for several months. Sirius Black, you've been brought here under the following charges. Accessory to the murders of James and Lily Potter, accessory to the attempted murder of Harry James Potter, and the mass murder of Peter Pettigrew and 12 Muggles. Amelia Bones announced. What do you plead? I'm not guilty, Madam Bones. Sirius Black replied. In that case, let's start the questioning. She stated. Did James and Lily Potter use the Fidelius charm to keep their home and their son hidden from you-know-who? Yes, Sirius sadly answered. Witnesses claim to have heard you stating the deaths of James and Lily Potter were your fault. What did you do to make their deaths your fault? Amelia Bones asked. I convinced them to switch secret keepers. Sirius answered, shocking everyone who hasn't heard about it before. Who was the original secret keeper? She asked. I was. Why do you want them to switch? She asked. Because I thought I'd be too obvious as a secret keeper and they'd be safer if I were just a decoy. Sirius explained while crying. Who was the new secret keeper? Peter Pettigrew. Sirius answered and then braced himself for the shouts of outrage from wizards and witches refusing to believe Peter Pettigrew was a Death Eater instead of a hero who lost his life to capture a Death Eater. In fact, the trial had to wait until the shouts stopped. How do you know Peter Pettigrew was the new secret keeper? She asked. I was there when Lily cast the new Fidelius charm and Peter Pettigrew told me where the Potters were so I could help keeping the charade of the secret keeper's identity. Sirius explained. Have the Potters ever told anyone about the switch before they died? Amelia asked. Not that I know. Sirius simply stated. Have you ever told anyone before you were arrested? She asked. No. How convenient. Dolores Umbridge scoffed. How do you explain the witnesses to your last meeting with Peter Pettigrew stating he shouted that you were the secret keeper? He did it to mislead the witnesses and whoever listened to them. Sirius explained. Are you saying you killed Peter Pettigrew to avenge the Potters? Umbridge sarcastically asked. I didn't kill him. Sirius shouted and then calmed a little. Peter Pettigrew caused that explosion and left a finger behind to fake his death. Aren't you ashamed of yourself for trying to tarnish the memory of someone you murdered, Black? Lord McLaggen asked in outrage. The only thing I did that I'm ashamed of was trusting the safety of my friends to Peter Pettigrew. Sirius shouted. Mr. Black, if Peter Pettigrew didn't die in that explosion, how did he leave the crime scene without being noticed by the witnesses? Amelia Bones asked. He assumed his Animagus form. He explained. Which Animagus form? Dolores Umbridge asked. Peter Pettigrew isn't in the Animagus registry. He's an unregistered rat Animagus. Sirius answered. Did you see him transforming? Dolores Umbridge asked. No. Sirius answered, deciding he'd make his situation worse if he lied. Then how do you know Peter Pettigrew became a rat Animagus? Umbridge asked. James and I helped him. Sirius explained. Care to elaborate? Umbridge asked. Back when we were Hogwarts students, James, Pettigrew and I decided to become Animagi. Sirius explained. James and I managed to do so, but Pettigrew needed help. We were better at transfiguration than him. Sirius Black, do you know what the Aurors who arrested you found out when they checked your wand for spells? Umbridge asked. I don't even know if they did or not. Sirius answered. I hope they're testifying. Oh, they will, Umbridge maliciously replied. Is there anything else you'd like to say regarding this case, Mr. Black? She asked, and he said he didn't. Does anybody else have any questions to the defendant? Nobody replied. In this case, bring in the first witness, Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore. Albus Dumbledore was then welcomed into the witnesses' seat. Chief Warlock Dumbledore, you're here to give testimony regarding the identity of the secret keeper who betrayed the Potters to he who must not be named, thus being accessory to their RDER and the attempted murder of their son. Dolores Umbridge stated. What was your role in their use of the Fidelius charm? I was the one to suggest it to them and the one to cast the charm, Dolores. Dumbledore calmly answered. Who did you set as the secret keeper? Umbridge asked. Sirius Black. Dumbledore answered. Did you have any objections about Sirius Black being the secret keeper, Chief Warlock Dumbledore? Umbridge asked. Not specifically against him, but I suspected there was a traitor spying for Voldemort and I suggested James and Lily used me as their secret keeper. Dumbledore answered. Unfortunately, James Potter had a firm position about trusting friends. I have no more questions. Umbridge stated. I have. Amelia Bones replied. Chief Warlock Dumbledore, is it possible that the Potters had switched secret keepers without you knowing it? I find it rather unlikely, Amelia. Dumbledore calmly replied. I didn't ask about the likeliness of this having happened. Dumbledore. Amelia replied with a stern tone. I asked if it was possible. Well, it is possible given the Potters' hiding place was also their residence. Dumbledore conceded. However, it's unlikely they'd have switched secret keepers. Sirius Black, do you wish to interrogate the witness? Amelia Bones asked him. I have no questions, Madam Bones. Sirius replied. Does anyone have any questions to the witness? She asked. As nobody said anything, Amelia Bones called for the next witness. Bring in the Minister of Magic Cornelius Oswald Fudge. Cornelius Fudge then took the witness seat. Minister Fudge, you're here to give testimony regarding events of November the 1st, 1981. Amelia Bones stated. For the record, what was your occupation back then? I was a junior mem. Of the Department of Magical Accidents and Catastrophes. Fudge answered. Was it on your duty you went to the crime scene, Minister Fudge? She asked. Yes, he answered. The Ministry's tracking charms detected the use of a blasting hex in a Muggle-populated area and the Department of Magical Accidents and Catastrophes sent me there to investigate. What did you find? Amelia Bones asked. Several charred bodies and Sirius Black laughing like a maniac. Fudge answered. What did you do then? She asked. I've signaled for Aurors to come. He explained. Having already heard from Albus Dumbledore about Sirius Black being the secret keeper, the ones who responded were so furious they quickly stunned him without bothering to listen to whatever he had to say on his defense. Did they check Sirius Black's wand for spells? Amelia Bones asked. No, they snapped his wand without checking it. He answered, shocking everyone including Sirius, who didn't know what happened to his wand. How did you react to this? Amelia Bones asked. I was shocked and asked them how they dared to snap a wizard's wand like that. He explained. They then told me about Sirius Black being the Potter's betrayer. It wasn't hard to accept this explanation since the Muggle witnesses to the explosion heard him saying all of it was his fault. Did he ever say what he did to make it his fault? Amelia Bones asked. No, Fudge answered. Didn't you think he should have been asked? She asked. This is Auror responsibility, Madam Bones. He explained. I thought they'd question him later. Didn't you find it odd there wasn't a trial until now? She asked. You were supposed to know he didn't have one since you're a witness. Dolores Umbridge interrupted. What are you insinuating, Madam Bones? Never mind, Madam Umbridge. Fudge replied. I'll answer. Like most wizards, I simply assumed Sirius Black pleaded guilty and there'd be no need for a trial. Fair enough, Amelia Bones stated. Sirius Black, do you wish to interrogate the witness? Yes, Sirius answered. Cornelius Fudge, Did the Aurors check Peter Pettigrew's wand for spells? Not at the crime scene, and I don't know what they did with it afterwards. Fudge answered. How was Peter Pettigrew's finger found and properly identified as such? Sirius asked. After the witnesses pointed out the direction they saw your wand pointed at. I found that finger among the corpses and performed an identity spell to confirm it was Peter Pettigrew's. Fudge answered. Was there any scorch marks on that finger? Sirius asked. Fudge thought a little before answering. No. Was there any mark indicating that finger had been cut off his hand? Sirius asked. Actually, yes. Dumbledore couldn't believe what he was hearing. Cornelius Fudge's testimony was helping Black. Did Malfoy bribe him? For the first time ever, Albus Dumbledore was considering the idea of accepting the post of Minister of Magic. Anything to keep the post from someone who'd lie to help Sirius Black out of Azkaban. No more questions, Sirius stated, as nobody else had any questions other than Albus Dumbledore, who wasn't allowed any during the trial because he was a witness. The Aurors who arrested him were called to testify. Aside from the fact their testimony didn't include details from Peter Pettigrew's finger, it wasn't different from Fudge's. After that, Dolores Umbridge called for a vote. It was by a narrow margin, but, to Dumbledore's dismay, Sirius Black was declared innocent of everything except being an unregistered animagus. And the punishment for this caused a mere dent on the compensation he was now entitled for his wrongful imprisonment. With a feeling of defeat, Albus Dumbledore returned to Hogwarts, where he ced the news of Sirius Black's newfound freedom. Students, I have bad news to tell, he sadly stated. Sirius Black has been officially declared innocent of all charges. Dumbledore then waited for cries of fear and outrage to wear off before continuing. Apparently, Sirius Black became an unregistered dog animagus and took advantage of this to concoct a tale about Peter Pettigrew being an unregistered rat animagus and taking advantage of this to flee the crime scene and fake his death. Harry then connected the dots and raised his hand. Professor McGonagall, if an animagus loses a finger while on human form, would this be visible on the animal form? The deputy headmistress was confused by Harry's sudden interest on the topic but felt like answering. Yes, Mr. Potter. In that case, I think I know where Peter Pettigrew is hiding, Harry stated while staring at Ron. The other Weasley boys and Cormac McLaggen also seemed to understand as they also stared at Ron, who had yet to understand. What? Scared. Scabbers tried to flee but Fred, George, Harry, Percy and Cormac tried to stun him and several other Gryffindors decided to do the same until one of them finally hit him. What's the meaning of this? Professor McGonagall angrily asked. This rat might be Peter Pettigrew, Professor. Harry explained. Professor McGonagall scoffed. Peter Pettigrew being an animagus is just a ludicrous tale Sirius Black made up. This rat cannot be an animagus and I'll prove it by casting the spell that forces animagi back to their human forms. She then cast the spell and, to everyone's, including hers, shock, Scabbers the rat was turned into a human. Minerva McGonagall recognized as Peter Pettigrew. Where am I? The rat turned human asked. You, Mr. Pettigrew, are in deep trouble, Minerva McGonagall answered, scaring the former student. I'd hate having to think about how many points I'd dock from Gryffindor if you still were a student back when you faked your death. I had to, Peter Pettigrew pleaded. Sirius Black was going after me. Black was an Azkaban inmate for years, Pettigrew. Snape said with hate in his voice. Why did you never reveal yourself? I knew it was just a matter of time until someone would allow him a trial and he'd sweet-talk his way out. Peter whimpered. All wealthy Death Eaters tricked the Ministry into releasing them. You being alive proves Sirius Black spoke the truth about you faking your death. Harry intervened. Harry, Pettigrew exclaimed with fake joy. You look like your father except for your mother's eyes. Harry then drew his wand at the rat. No offense to James and Lily Potter, but the first people that come to my mind as my parents are Vernon and Petunia Dursley. I'm glad they care for you and I'm sure James and Lily. Whatever Peter Pettigrew would say about the Potters was interrupted by Albus Dumbledore immobilizing him. Dumbledore then rolled up Pettigrew's sleeve, revealing a strange tattoo. The dark mark. Several people exclaimed in shock. The what? Harry asked in confusion. Harry, this is Voldemort's mark. Dumbledore exclaimed. Voldemort and his Death Eaters left one wherever they attacked. And each Death Eater had the mark on their arm. Did Sirius Black have one to make people so sure he was a Death Eater? Harry asked. Dumbledore hung his head in shame. We were so sure he was a Death Eater we never bothered to check. Harry, Headmaster, what'll happen now? Peter Pettigrew will be taken for questioning and will probably try to offer names in exchange for a smaller sentence. Dumbledore explained. No Death Eater was allowed to learn the names of all of them, and he might know names of some who have never been exposed as such. As for Sirius Black, I'm afraid we'll have to discuss it in private with Vernon and Petunia Dursley. Please review. Justice and Reunion. Chapter 5. Justice and Reunion. I can't believe this. Ron still couldn't get used to the idea. My rat was a Death Eater all this time. You think that was bad? Cormac asked in reply. I'm still trying to get used to the idea of Sirius Black being innocent. What's the problem with my godfather being innocent? Harry asked. You wouldn't understand since you grew up isolated from the wizarding world, Harry. Ron explained. We grew up hearing tales about Sirius Black being you-know-who's right-hand man. Even if Sirius Black were the Death Eater the wizarding world believed him to be, what would make people believe him to be the right-hand man? Harry asked in confusion. Sirius Black is the heir of one of the darkest families in England. Ron explained. They support you-know-who's ideals even if the only confirmed Death Eaters among the Blacks were from Sirius Black's generation. Were THEY really Death Eaters, or were also victims of miscarriages of justice? Harry asked, not believing Sirius could have been the only victim of this. Sirius Black's younger brother died during the Wizarding War, and it was believed but not confirmed he was killed by Death Eaters after trying to leave them. Cormac explained. Their cousin Bellatrix Lestrange was taken to court, where she confirmed her crimes and affirmed you-know-who would eventually return and rescue her and the other two Lestranges. Well, the Department of Magical Law Enforcement is questioning Peter Pettigrew while we speak. Harry commented. Meanwhile, Amelia Bones was proving Harry Potter right. Why wouldn't you let the wizarding world know that explosion didn't kill you, Mr. Pettigrew? I knew Sirius Black would cheat justice. He pleaded. I was afraid he'd kill me if he knew he failed the last time he tried. Mr. Pettigrew, the minister wants to end this as soon as possible. Amelia Bones demanded. If you're guilty and we need Veritaserum to prove it, you'll be given the Dementor's kiss. Were you the one who revealed the Potter's location to he who must not be named? Why yes. Peter meekly answered. Ed after deciding he didn't want to know how far she'd go to fulfill her threat. Did you cause the explosion that killed 12 Muggles in November 1st, 1981? Yes. Did you leave a finger behind? In that explosion seemed to trick people into thinking that explosion killed you. Yes, and it still amazes me nobody found it odd there was considerably less of me than of the killed Muggles. Peter replied. Fine, she stated in disgust. Just confirm it in front of the Wizengamot and the kiss is off. That night, at 4, Privet Drive, Albus Dumbledore was talking to the Dursleys. So, Sirius Black was really innocent? Vernon asked. Yes, Peter Pettigrew was found alive and, realizing there was no point in denying, confessed to everything. The headmaster explained. He won't try to take our son away from us, will he? Petunia asked with evident worry in her face. I know Harry's birth parents named him his magical guardian, but... Don't worry, Petunia, Dumbledore reassured with his grandfatherly voice. While it'd be within his rights to claim full custody of Harry, Sirius Black said he'd understand if Harry decided to stay with you after all those years he lived under your care. However, I'd not deny him visitation rights. Well, I suppose it'd be okay since he is Harry's godfather, but his meetings with Harry must be supervised. Vernon replied. Innocent or not, there's no telling how much he changed after all those years with those Dementor things as companions, and Petunia and I didn't know much about him from before that anyway. A reasonable request, no doubt, Vernon. Dumbledore replied. I'll talk to Sirius about that and schedule a meeting. 2 days later, after arriving home from work, Vernon Dursley asked his wife. Petunia, do you have the portkey headmaster Dumbledore gave us? Right over here, Vernon. Petunia answered as she pointed at the necklace she's wearing. Then let's go, Vernon excitedly said. I'm so glad I won't have to wait for the Kree STMAS holidays before seeing our son again. Don't forget the special wristbands Headmaster Dumbledore gave us so we'd be able to see Hogwarts despite being muggles. Petunia reminded him with a sweet voice. They then portkeyed themselves to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, where Deputy Headmistress Minerva McGonagall welcomed them. Welcome to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Mr. and Mrs. Dursley, she said. I shall escort you to the headmaster's office. They then started walking. Deputy Headmistress McGonagall, we'd also like to discuss your potions master's teaching methods. Vernon stated. I got word that Professor Snape punished Harry because of what happened to a potion that wasn't the one he was supposed to be responsible for. We'll investigate these claims, Mr. Dursley, she replied, already expecting Snape to be unfair to Harry because of the grudge held against James Potter. See that you do, Vernon said with his arrogance. They then entered Dumbledore's office. The gargoyle statues guarding the entrance were no surprise to either half of the Dursley couple. Vernon, Petunia, welcome to my office. Albus Dumbledore greeted them. Minerva, please go fetch Mr. Potter. So, you got over your hatred of magic, Petunia? Sirius maliciously asked after Professor McGonagall left. I didn't actually hate magic. Petunia sadly replied. I was upset my sister was accepted here and I wasn't. Please, Mr. Black, Vernon pleaded, unsure of how to talk to a man who only started recovering from years of wrongful imprisonment. We're here for Harry's sake. Sirius then eagerly showed a Nimbus 2000. Do you think he'll like it? He asked with a large smile. Not much considering that, as a first year, he's not allowed a broomstick of his own, Mr. Black, Vernon explained. Sirius, smile deflated. Well, the rule says he's not allowed his own broomstick, but there's no rule about somebody else's. He could borrow one from me and use it until his second year, when he'll be allowed his own broomstick. He then allowed himself another smile. I wonder how Minerva would like that idea, Dumbledore commented, scaring Sirius. Remembering Professor R. McGonagall already taught at Hogwarts back when Sirius Black was a student, the Dursleys were wondering how a teacher can be so scary a former student who'd endured prison for almost 10 years would still be afraid of her. Either way, Mr. Black, Harry grew up isolated from the wizarding world and we believe he needs someone who knows about its customs to help him adjust. Vernon stated. We did our best but, as we fear, our knowledge of magic isn't enough for this. Not to mention you were more acquainted to James Potter than we were. There's so much about Harry's birth father he doesn't know and we can't tell. You came to the right man, Mr. Dursley, Sirius eagerly replied. I was James Potter's best friend during Hogwarts time and I was raised in the wizarding world. Minerva McGonagall then brought Harry inside. Mum, Dad, Harry asked in surprise. Am I in trouble? Not at all, son. Vernon calmly replied. We just insisted to be around when you finally meet your godfather. Is he here? Harry asked in curiosity. Sirius Black took offense for not being recognized. Harry, I am your godfather. Harry then looked at the Dursleys for confirmation. Yes, Harry, Petunia said. He is. Did you see that, Headmaster? Sirius asked in exasperation. He doesn't even recognize me. Sirius, it's not like we can fault Harry or his guardians, Headmaster Dumbledore started explaining until Harry interrupted him. Parents. Excuse me, Sirius asked. I'd rather think of them as my parents instead of guardians. Harry explained. Well, it's not like we could fault Harry or his parents for your years of wrongful imprisonment. Albus Dumbledore explained. Agreed, Sirius replied. They weren't chief warlocks of the Wizengamot, heads of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement or ministers of magic. Dumbledore lowered his head down in shame. Sirius then talked to Harry. It was an awkward conversation. Harry, your parents, your birth ones I mean, wanted me to raise you. I'll understand if you prefer to stay with the Dursleys but only if you say so after knowing I was James and Lily's first choice and the miscarriage of justice I suffered was the only reason I didn't do it until now. Fine, Harry replied. I understand it wasn't your fault but I'd rather live with my parents. I understand, Harry, Sirius replied in conformity. Harry, we were talking to your godfather about this and, while he was ready to accept you wouldn't leave us, he'd like to visit occasionally. Vernon explained. An adult wizard who grew up in the wizarding world can teach you a About wizarding customs, and Sirius Black could tell you more about James Potter than we could ever hope to. Really? Harry eagerly asked. Of course, Prongslet. Sirius happily replied. I know all about his several attempts to win Lily Evans' heart. Why did you call me Prongslet, Mr. Black? You can call me Sirius Prongslet, he replied. Back when we were students, James and I were part of a prankster group known as the Marauders. Sirius explained. James was Prongs. I was Padfoot, and you can call me this or Uncle Paddy if you prefer. Remus Lupin was Moony, and that traitor was Wormtail. I hope he's hanged for this. Vernon angrily grunted. While you'd be hard-pressed to find a wizard with a different mindset, Mr. Dursley, whenever we believe a magical criminal to be T.S. beyond redemption, we use the Dementor's kiss. Sirius explained. He'd still be alive, but only when using the words. Technical meaning. Serves him right. Petunia spat. Harry then noticed Sirius' broom. Is that a Nimbus 2000? Yes. Prongslet. Sirius happily exclaimed, glad Harry showed interested in flying broomsticks. Would you like to have it? Sirius Black, I thought you were already minded he isn't allowed a broomstick of his own as a first year. Vernon sternly replied. Well, I tried. Sirius pouted. Don't worry, Sirius, Harry replied. Mum and Dad said they might give me for my next birthday if I behave this year. If you don't, I'll get you one. Sirius Orion Black, how dare you discourage a student from behaving? Deputy Headmistress McGonagall shouted in anger. Come on, Minnie, Sirius replied with humor. Would you expect anything different from one of your favorite pranksters? Sirius then turned his attention to Harry. I see you kept up with the Potter tradition of being sorted into Gryffindor. You must have seen mentions about Prongs and I playing Quidditch. I've seen my birth father, but not about you, Harry replied, causing Sirius to turn his attention to Professor McGonagall, who apologized. I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Black, but I was so sure you were guilty I destroyed your trophies. Apology accepted, Minnie, Sirius sadly replied. And don't call me Minnie, she angrily shouted. Please review. New developments. Chapter 6. New developments. Remus John Lupin had the shock of his life when he read the Daily Prophet. Not only it was Peter Pettigrew, and not Sirius Black, who betrayed the Potters to Voldemort, but Pettigrew had actually caused that explosion and discarded a finger to trick everyone into thinking Sirius had killed him. And those muggles who died in that explosion. A few days later, Vernon and Petunia Dursley were at Sirius Black's house to discuss Harry. Is this where you lived before your wrongful imprisonment? Vernon asked. I'm surprised the place wasn't torn apart by angry wizards who believed you to be guilty. I'm sure somebody tried, but my house is warded. Sirius explained. Someone with enough power could break through, but it'd take so long the ministry would have time to send someone to stop them before they caught the muggles' attention. But we're here to talk about Harry. We're concerned over his safety at Hogwarts, Mr. Black, Petunia replied. Hogwarts is the safest place on Earth. Sirius exclaimed as if it was the world's most obvious thing. Petunia, I believe he'll have a better understanding after reading the letters Harry wrote to us. Vernon replied as he showed said letters. Sirius read and was indeed shocked. Snivellus is teaching. Sneefut. Vernon asked in confusion. Snivellus is how James and I used to call Severus Snape back in our days as Hogwarts students. Sirius explained. That greasy git knew more about the dark arts during his first year than most 7 years even within Slytherin House. He later became a Death Eater but avoided Azkaban by allegedly turning spy for our side. Wait a minute, Vernon demanded. Did I get this right? That crackpot Dumbledore believed a confirmed Death Eater's alleged reform to the point he hired said Death Eater to work at a place full of children while an accused Death Eater was denied a trial. I know, Sirius muttered. The money the ministry gave me is no comfort for all the lost years. Can't we complain to whatever people Dumbledore responds to as the headmaster of Hogwarts? Vernon asked. That would be the Hogwarts Board of Governors. Vernon, Sirius explained. Honestly, I don't expect them to do anything about Snivellus. They'd rather agree to see what is so important about the 3rd floor, and I agree that's something worth checking out. I guess I'll make a few flow calls. Sirius was about to pick some flow powder when he heard someone knocking at the door. Were you expecting visitors other than us? Sirius, Vernon asked. No, Vernon. Sirius answered and then went to the door. Who's there? Remus Lupin. Sirius was suspecting some foul play. What's the password? Remus was annoyed but felt he deserved this. Padfoot is the most beautiful marauder and I don't know what Lily Evans saw on prongs when Padfoot was available. Sirius opened the door but kept his wand pointed at his former friend. What are you here for, Moony? I'm here to apologize, Padfoot. Remus sadly answered. I should have suspected you were not the betrayer. Why didn't you tell me about the switch of secret keepers? It was then Sirius' time to lower his head. I thought you were the one spying on us. Wait a minute, Vernon interrupted. Are you Remus Lupin, who wouldn't be allowed custody of Harry because of your lycanthropy? You told them. Remus asked Sirius in shock. We've learned about you when we read James and Lily's will. Vernon explained and then grew worried. Should we worry about catching it from you? Full moons are the only time people have to worry about that. Remus explained. And the rules of etiquette dictate people should introduce themselves to others before asking them to do the same. Fair enough, Vernon replied. My name is Vernon Dursley and this is my wife Petunia. Nice to meet you, equally. Remus replied. My name is Remus John Lupin. Mr. and Mrs. Dursley. You're Harry Potter's uncle and aunt, right? Technically yes, but we'd rather think of Harry like a son instead of nephew. Vernon explained. Really? Remus was surprised. I thought the of you were too afraid of magic to actually see a magical child like that. Family is family, Mr. Lupin. Vernon replied. Sure. The cases of accidental magic worried us at first, but Harry is a child, and because of that madman we became his only remaining family. While Remus agreed that Voldemort was a madman, he found it odd to hear somebody calling him that. That was even rarer than someone calling him by name. Well, I'm glad to learn Harry grew up with a loving family. He commented. Well, Mr. Lupin, you were acquaintances of Professor Severus Snape back from when the both of you attended Hogwarts. Vernon stated. What do you think about him teaching at Hogwarts? Well, Professor Dumbledore trusts Severus repented his crimes and most people find it hard to suspect he might ever be wrong. Remus explained. Severus has been teaching at Hogwarts for years and he never harmed anyone despite any fears parents might have had at first. I am aware Severus and James hated each other during their years as Hogwarts students. Petunia said and then showed Remus one of Harry's letters. I'm afraid Professor Snape is taking his frustrations on Harry. In the next day, the first-year Gryffindors and Slytherins were having their first flying lessons. Flying instructor Rolanda Hooch instructed each student to place themselves at a broomstick's left side and then place their GHT hand over said broomstick and then say, up. Some broomsticks quickly complied, other ones, not so much. Hooch then told the students to ride their broomsticks. Neville had a problem with his he needed to be taken to the school infirmary. While Madame Hooch scouted Neville Longbottom away, Draco Malfoy picked up something that fell from Neville's pockets. Hey, that's Neville's Remembral, Ron shouted. Remembrals are clear, glass balls that contain smoke that turns red when their owner has forgotten something. It turns clear once whatever was forgotten is remembered. The use of Remembrals is forbidden during tests, albeit some students wonder why, since Remembrals don't seem to remind their users of whatever they had forgotten. Don't worry, Weasley, Malfoy arrogantly said. I'll let it at the top of the tower. As Malfoy flew upwards, Harry made a Jedi-like gesture with his right hand and Accio. Accio is the magic word for a summoning spell taught to fourth years during charms classes. Harry somehow managed to do it during his childhood one day when he and the Dursleys were buying groceries. They convinced everyone around that item just fell and later told Harry to be careful about using magic among muggles, the Remembral. Enraged, Malfoy decided to provoke Harry. What's wrong, Potter? Too afraid to come up here and face me like a wizard? What's wrong, Malfoy? Too afraid to come down here and face me like a wizard? Harry mocked in reply. Crab, Goyle, get me that Remembral, Malfoy shouted. Ron, for all that Malfoy mocks your family about money, he doesn't seem to have much more money than you. Harry stated in even more mockery. He needs to resort to stealing to get a Remembral. Everyone started laughing at this comment. Enraged, Malfoy flew towards Harry while pointing his wand at the young Gryffindor. Harry dove out of the way while the other Gryffindor first years ran away. While Harry was down, Malfoy hit him with the leg locker curse. Draco Malfoy, how dare you hex one of your fellow students like that? Flying Instructor Hooch shouted in outrage upon returning. He stole Longbottom's Remembral. Malfoy lied. Several Gryffindors and Slytherins shouted after that. The Gryffindors to defend Harry and the Slytherins to defend Malfoy. Did you need to ride your broomstick because of that, Mr. Malfoy? She asked in reply. As he was unable to come up with a suitable answer, she figured out he was lying. Malfoy was then taken to the deputy headmistress. Madame Hooch could have taken him to his head of house, but she didn't expect him to make an unbiased judgment over the matter. After that, Draco Malfoy complained to Professor Snape. Professor, you must do something. I am terribly sorry, Mr. Malfoy, but I cannot override detentions assigned by any of my colleagues. Snape replied. He was sincere, but his face never showed it to anyone. Malfoy could only wonder about, especially those assigned by the deputy headmistress. She'd start overriding the detentions I assign other students. Can't you at least assign Potter a detention? Malfoy asked. It was his fault. No matter how much I agree with this statement, Mr. Malfoy, it's not in my place to assign detentions to any students unless it's for something I catch them doing. I'm the first professor to learn about, or whoever catches them asks me to handle the case. Snape explained. 2 days later, Headmaster Dumbledore got a visit from Sirius Black and the Hogwarts Board of Governors. How may I help you? Dumbledore asked, wondering what Sirius Black was doing among them. Sirius Black informed us you've told the students to avoid a certain area of the third-floor corridor. Hogwarts Governor Lucius Malfoy told the headmaster. The board decided to make inquiries. What exactly are you keeping that'd warrant a warning of painful death? Dumbledore thought about it and saw no reason to lie. The Philosopher's Stone. What? Sirius asked, shouted in outrage. Do you have any idea of how many dark wizards would kill for that stone? How dare you bring it to a place full of children? Don't you care about their safety? Hogwarts is the safest place on Earth, Sirius. Dumbledore calmly replied. Gringotts is a close second, and yet somebody broke into it and managed to escape capture. Lucius replied, shocking Sirius. What? Lucius quickly understood Sirius not knowing about it. You still were in Azkaban when it happened. In July 31st of this year, somebody broke into a Gringotts vault and completely avoided capture. The only reason Gringotts still can claim nothing has ever been stolen from them was that said vault had been previously emptied, so there wasn't anything to be stolen from it. The goblins wouldn't tell what was in that vault, but I assume it was the stone. Am I right to assume that, Headmaster? Dumbledore sighed in defeat. Yes, Lucius. Lucius and the other governors talked among themselves to decide what to do. Headmaster, we'd like to check how safe the stone is and how dangerous the protections are to the students. Lucius stated. Sirius, we appreciate that you brought this to our attention, but I'm afraid we can no longer let you tag along with this. I'll call a professor to escort you out, Sirius. Dumbledore replied. If you don't mind, I'd like to see my godson first. Sirius stated. And any professor but Snivellus. Dumbledore and the board then approached the forbidden door. Alohomora, the headmaster shouted while pointing his wand at the door. On the other side, there was a three-headed dog. That was almost as big as the room they were in. Dumbledore then conjured a harp and had it play, calming the dog. Headmaster, have you ever thought about the students who learned that unlocking spell but not how to calm the Cerberus? Lucius asked, and the others nodded in agreement. I'm sure they'd heed my warnings. I thought you were already the headmaster by the time the Marauders attended Hogwarts. Lucius replied. Then they noticed Devil's Snare. A rather vicious plant. They escaped it by conjuring flames. They then reached a room with a better locked door, some flying broomsticks and several winged keys. Dumbledore and the Board of Governors also found 2 reasons to believe keeping the Philosopher's Stone at Hogwarts was a bad idea: Fred Weasley and George Weasley. Brother of mine, we've been caught. And it must be something very serious if the headmaster and the Board of Governors bothered to show up. 2 of the governors scouted the twins to Professor McGonagall so she'd assign them detentions. On their way out of the trap series, they found Professor Quirrell going to join the others. Neither the twins nor the governors found anything odd on this. After using Nay of the winged keys to unlock the door, Dumbledore led the Board of Governors to a giant chess set. Does anyone play wizarding chess? Dumbledore asked. What for? Lucius Malfoy asked as he pointed his wand at the chess set and shouted. Wingardium Leviosa. The chess set floated away, revealing a way ahead. Dumbledore, what kind of defense was that? Another governor asked in outrage. Anion. He can get past it with a charm taught to first-year students. Dumbledore didn't answer. After getting past that, they met a troll. Dumbledore had some trouble to stop it, but they eventually got past it. Honestly, Headmaster, didn't you have a way to prevent students from reaching this point without hurting them? Lucius asked, and the others agreed to the question. I'm sure they'd heed my warnings. Dumbledore replied. The Weasley twins didn't. Lucius replied. Yes, I acknowledge my mistake in not realizing they'd do something like that. Dumbledore conceded. Later on, they found Potion VIALS in a poem giving a clue to which potion was which. Because of the flames blocking the path they came from and those blocking the way ahead, there was one they'd need to go ahead, one they'd need to return. Poisons and alcoholic beverages. Headmaster, why'd you leave a clue to help thieves to find out which potion would help them go ahead and later one that'd help them leave? Malfoy asked. Not that they'd need it. Lucius then performed the charm that allowed witches to survive being burned. After getting past this defense, they found a room with a mirror. Is this the mirror of Arise, Dumbledore? A governor asked. Yes, it is. Dumbledore happily explained. I've hidden the stone inside the mirror and cast a spell so the only people able to retrieve it are those who want the stone but do not desire to use it. I've heard enough, Dumbledore. They heard someone saying. They looked around and saw Professor Quirrell, but the voice wasn't his. Reveal yourself, Tom. Dumbledore commanded. I don't use this name anymore. They heard from Quirrell's back. There's no more use hiding it, Quirinus. Remove your turban. Yes, my lord. The Dada professor replied without his usual stuttering. He then revealed a face hidden under the turban. Aye, is this he who must not be named? A governor asked in fear. I believe so. Dumbledore answered. The years haven't been nice to you, Tom. My name is Voldemort. Tom shouted. Now give me the Philosopher's Stone or everyone dies. Catch it, Lucius Malfoy said as he threw the stone at Voldemort. However, before the Dark Lord managed to catch it, several governors cast spells to destroy it. Fools, Voldemort shouted. Now all of you are going to die. Fiendfire. Dumbledore cast a magical circle to protect himself and the governors. Eventually, Quirrellmort lost control of Fiendfire and ended up being burned by it. The professor died while the wraith of Voldemort fled. Lucius Malfoy, you'll submit to a disciplinary hearing about this. A governor said, and the Department of Magical Law Enforcement will hear about it as well. Another one added, please review. Lucius Malfoy's Legal Troubles. Chapter 7. Lucius Malfoy's Legal Troubles. Lucius Malfoy's attempt to please his not-so-dead lord and master came out as more expensive than he expected. The rest of the Board of Governors was not happy at his decision or his excuse. Fellow governors, he who must not be named threatened to kill all of us. I was trying to save you. Even at his full power he feared Albus Dumbledore. Another one replied, and there were several of us against him. You were a coward or worse, an actual Death Eater. I wasn't an actual Death Eater. Lucius pleaded. I was forced into his service. I wish I still could believe that, Lord Malfoy. Yet another governor replied, as it is, I have no choice but motion to have you removed from the Board of Governors. All in favor please raise your wands. All governors except Lucius, of course, did so. Well, it's unanimous now. Lucius Malfoy, from now on you're no longer a member of the Board of Governors. We'll also inform the Department of Magical Law Enforcement of our actions to see if they warrant further punishment. Feel free to do so. Lucius Malfoy replied, completely believing a simple donation would keep him out of Azkaban. How wrong he was. I'm terribly sorry, Lucius. But with the Hogwarts Board of Governors using their prestige against you, I cannot save you the humiliation of facing a trial, no matter how generous you are. Cornelius Fudge apologized. We're already under scrutiny because of the previous administration's mistake of not allowing Sirius Black to plead his case in a trial. Your only hope would be getting enough Wizengamot members to vote for your acquittal. The best I can do for you is to place you under house arrest so you wouldn't have to wait in Azkaban until your day in court. The Ministry had put a trace spell on you too. Make sure you'll not leave Malfoy Manor until some Aurors escort you to your trial." "I see," Lucius Malfoy said while trying to contain his fury. After the Minister of Magic left, Malfoy focused his mind on the diary Voldemort told him to keep. Voldemort told him it had the power to possess a student and force them to reopen the Chamber of Secrets. The diary's cover said the diary was a property of a T.M. Riddle. When Lucius asked his father, Abraxas Malfoy, about T.M. Riddle, Abraxas explained he was Tom Marvolo Riddle, a Slytherin prefect from the time the chamber was opened. Riddle earned an award for special services for denouncing Rubeus Hagrid as the heir of Slytherin after Moaning Myrtle was killed and Salazar Slytherin's monster was believed to be the killer. However, the Sleeth errands from when Riddle attended Hogwarts knew him to be a Parselmouth despite Riddle not being anything more than a half-blood as evidenced by the fact nobody else named Riddle was ever known in Hogwarts or anywhere else in the wizarding world other than records of crimes committed by a wizard named Morfingaunt against a Riddle family made of muggles. Now, with Dumbledore having called the Dark Lord, Tom, Lucius Malfoy was sure Lord Voldemort was this Tom Riddle. Lucius was entertaining the idea of using the diary in one of Arthur Weasley's children to discredit him and prevent his pro-mug Law project from passing, but now that Malfoy learned Voldemort really deserved his self-appointed name. Voldemort is French for flight from death, he wouldn't disobey Tom's instructions. Meanwhile, back at Hogwarts, Dumbledore was making special announcements to the students. "Students of Hogwarts, due an unexpected development regarding our defense teacher, we had to hire a substitute one. Please welcome Professor Sirius Black, who agreed to teach classes for the rest of the term." All professors other than Snape were applauding. The students were scared at the prospect of being taught by a man who spent years in prison despite knowing he was innocent of the crimes he was sent there. Malfoy was now hoping he could take advantage from the fact the new defense teacher is his mother's cousin and heir to the noble and most ancient house of Black. "So, Harry, what should we expect from defense classes now your godfather will be teaching?" Ron eagerly asked after they returned to Gryffindor common room. "I have no idea, Ron," Harry answered. "I've only met him a few times and we never discussed the idea of him holding a teaching position at Hogwarts. I'm worried because he was born into a family of Slytherins so he might favor them, but he was sorted into Gryffindor so hopefully he'll favor us," Ron replied. "Honestly," Hermione Granger scolded Ron, "you should study Instia of expecting favoritism from Professor Black." "Shut up, Granger," Ron rudely replied. In the next morning, Gryffindors and Slytherins were readying themselves for their first defense lesson from Sirius Black. "Get out of the way, Weasley," Draco Malfoy ordered. "You can't order us around, Malfoy," Ron angrily replied. "You'd better be careful, Weasley," Draco arrogantly warned. "Professor Black is my mother's cousin and the heir to the noble and most ancient house of Black. It'll probably be just a matter of time until he allows me to call him Sirius." "So much for the famed Slytherin subtleness," Sirius Black replied as he entered the classroom. "Back when I was a student here, the Slytherins weren't so forward. Then again, the Slytherins of that time had a better head of house. To be add Professor Slughorn wasn't replaced with someone who'd keep his slug club active. I've heard Snivellus doesn't even understand the upside of seeing beyond house affiliations or blood status. The SL Wytherns were shocked the heir of Black would support association with those of lesser blood. However, the surprises didn't stop there. In fact, the Malfoys from before the Statute of Secrecy had no qualms about associating with wealthy muggles if it benefited them. "Lies," Draco Malfoy shouted in outrage. "My family is too pure to associate with such filth." "It doesn't surprise me you'd not know, Mr. Malfoy," Sirius replied. "Once the Statute of Secrecy passed, the Malfoys from the day acted as if they have always been supporters. But I'm here to teach defense, not history, so, will anyone tell where Professor Quirrell stopped?" Hermione Granger raised her hand. After that lesson, Draco Malfoy was upset. "So much for your mother's cousin favoring you, Malfoy," Ron taunted. A few days later, at the Wizengamot, Lucius Malfoy would be tried for his role in Voldemort almost getting the Philosopher's Stone. Lucius Malfoy, you've been charged with helping he who must not be named in an attempt to regain his powers. Minister of Magic Cornelius Fudge reluctantly stated. If found guilty, you'll be officially declared a Death Eater and sent to Azkaban. Did you try to give him the Philosopher's Stone? I had to, Malfoy explained. He threatened to kill everyone there. There, Fudge exclaimed in triumph. This is why he did what he had to. He must be acquitted. Madame Augusta Longbottom then rose. Do you have anything to ask, Madame Longbottom? Head of the Department of Magical Law. Enforcement Amelia Bones asked. Yes, she answered. Given that Albus Dumbledore was there and you know who wasn't at his best. Didn't you think you'd all remain safe? I was too scared to think straight. Lucius pleaded. Fortunately for Lucius, he had plenty of gold to spare and secured enough votes for an acquittal. Back at Malfoy Manor, he kept telling himself. It'll be worth it when the Dark Lord returns in full. Lucius Malfoy's recent almost conviction wasn't something his son would be allowed to forget anytime soon. Malfoy, does your father still have enough gold to consider himself wealthy after bribing whoever he needed to in order to avoid Azkaban? Ron taunted. Draco had a comeback this time. Weasley, are you so lame you need to put others down to make yourself feel better? First that Granger girl, then me. Who's next? I'd like to learn that as well. Harry replied. You were the one who asked her to show how to do the levitation charm and then you complained about her being a know-it-all. Harry, Ron exclaimed. Are you siding with Malfoy? His father is a Death Eater. Whatever his father does is no reason to hold it against him. Harry replied. It's this kind of mentality that allowed the Ministry to keep my godfather imprisoned without a trial for all those years. Harry, I know the Ministry made a mistake with Sirius Black but his family background was too dark. Ron argued. If not for the fact Peter Pettigrew had been found alive, I'd believe Black was a Death Eater who cheated justice. Professor Black, Ronald, Hermione scolded as she returned. And thank you for standing up for me, Harry and Malfoy. Anything to upset Weasley, Malfoy happily replied and then went back to the Slytherin common room. Please review. Ascension of the New Lord Black. Chapter 8. Ascension of the New Lord Black. The wizarding world woke up at day with shocking news. Lord Arcturus Black, head of the noble and most ancient House of Black, passed away. Lord Lucius Malfoy, head of the House of Malfoy, tried to claim the title for himself through his marriage to Narcissa Black. However, the succession rules of the noble and most ancient House of Black were quite clear about this. The title must go through the male line. Through this rule, the next head of the noble and most ancient House of Black will probably be Lord Arcturus Black's grandson Sirius Orion Black. Sirius Black, who had barely started picking up the pieces of his life. After being cleared of the crimes Death Eater Peter Pettigrew had framed him with, had just gained employment at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry teaching defense against the dark arts. Minerva, do you think I should take over as Lord Black? Sirius asked his colleague, who still hasn't got used to the idea of Sirius being one of her fellow staff members at Hogwarts. Sirius, do you have any idea of who will take over if you won't? She asked in reply. Realizing Lucius Malfoy would be the most likely candidate, he agreed to become the new Lord Black. Meanwhile, Bartemius Crouch was having one of the worst days of his life. Not only was he getting flack from the wizarding world once it was revealed his decision to skip trials for, obviously guilty, people caused an innocent person to be locked away in Azkaban for years, and the Ministry was reviewing all other cases of accused Death Eaters sent to Azkaban by him. Said innocent was about to inherit a Wizengamot seat. Who knows which sorts of ways Sirius Black could use this power to exact revenge. He was so worried about this he almost forgot to recast the Imperious Curse on his son so he'd not go around looking for Lord Voldemort. How Mr. Crouch regretted granting his dying wife's last request to help their son escape Azkaban. For those who don't know, Bartemius Crouch once was head of the Department of Magical Law Info. Cement and most likely candidate to become Minister of Magic, but it all ended when his son, Bartemius Crouch Jr., was exposed as a Death Eater and got a life sentence in Azkaban. With help from Polyjuice Potion, Jr. and his mother traded places. Mrs. Crouch died soon after and was buried using Junior's identity in a tomb that could be seen from Sirius Black's former cell. Since Mrs. Crouch's health was already deteriorating, her husband had no trouble staging a funeral for her. However, out of fear Junior would search for Voldemort, Bartemius Crouch Sr. kept his son under the Imperious Curse for all those years. Another person hating Sirius Black's ascension was Hogwarts potions master Severus Snape. As if it wasn't bad enough Black got the teaching job Snape wanted, he now inherited a title at the Wizengamot. Snape was now afraid Sirius Black would use his newfound power to give him his old cell in Azkaban. "Headmaster, you must do something about Sirius Black," he pleaded to Dumbledore. "Severus, I know you hate Sirius, but you must remember how hard it is to find a good teacher for the post he's holding, and I don't want to lose you to the curse Voldemort placed over it." Dumbledore calmly replied, "While Black's teaching methods are something that needs to be discussed, I'm worried he might use his newfound influence to place me in Azkaban." Snape explained, "There are still people around who believed I should have served some time in Azkaban." "Don't worry, Severus," Dumbledore reassured him. "I'm still around to keep you safe. And besides, I have a feeling Sirius is using his grudge-holding skills against another wizard." It took some time for Severus to understand what Dumbledore meant. Black would probably need to learn about his role in Potter's and Lil Wise deaths to hate him more than he hated the man responsible for his wrongful imprisonment in Azkaban. A few days later, at the first Wizengamot session, Sirius participated in as Lord Black. "Any new propositions?" Albus Dumbledore asked, and Sirius raised his wand. "The Wizengamot acknowledges Lord Sirius Black." "Thank you, Chief Warlock," Sirius replied with all the cordiality required for the post. Liking it or not, he was raised to become Lord Black. "Esteemed members of the Wizengamot, I propose that, rather than just reviewing the cases of others who, like me, have been sent to Azkaban without trial by Bartemius Crouch's orders, we should investigate Crouch's whole time as a member of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement. Who knows which other irregularities marked his time at that department?" Sirius Black had practically no problem getting the Wizengamot to approve the decision. After all, most members of the Wizengamot were either people who hated Crouch for his blunder, felt guilty for not noticing it before Harry Potter and his Muggle foster parents called their attention to it, and Death Eaters who hated Crouch for allowing Aurors to use the Unforgivables. Crouch knew he should have expected some sort of vengeance from Sirius Black, but never expected this much. After this, Dumbledore approached him. "Sirius, I understand your reasons to hate Bartemius, but did you need to go this far?" he asked. "He might have made some mistakes while deciding which accused Death Eaters should not be allowed trials, but did you really need to cause the discomfort of prying even more on his life?" "Who knows what else he did wrong, Headmaster?" Sirius asked in reply. "Hopefully he'll be sent to Azkaban by the time I'm done." That time came sooner than Sirius Black expected. As soon as someone learned about Crouch and his wife visiting Junior right before his death, the Ministry sent Aurors to interrogate him, and they suddenly found out Crouch Jr. was alive. Crouch Sr. was arrested for sheltering a fugitive. Unfortunately, Junior managed to escape by ordering his family's house elf, Winky, to take him to a safe place. "Master, what should we do about your father?" she asked out of concern. "Nothing," Junior sternly replied. "I'll look for my lord and you're helping me. It's an order." Winky had no choice but to comply. The Aurors who arrested Crouch delivered their report to Amelia Bones, who was reluctant to believe what she read. "Is this real? Did you really see Bartemius Crouch Jr. alive and well?" "Yes, Madam Bones," Auror John Dawlish answered. "Are you sure this isn't just a way to mock Bartemius Crouch for his blunder with Sirius Black?" she asked, still not believing. "Absolutely, Madam," Dawlish answered. Reluctantly, she went to Crouch's ministry cell and started interrogating him. "Bartemius Crouch, what do you have to say about the witnesses claiming to have seen your son alive and well? Please, you must stop him before he rejoins you know who." Crouch desperately pleaded. "How can your son be alive?" Amelia Bones asked. "Didn't he die in Azkaban?" "No," he answered. "I helped him to escape." "Then who or what was buried at his grave in Azkaban?" "His mother," Crouch answered. "They swapped places by drinking polyjuice potion." "Why did you help them?" "It was her last wish," he answered. "I wanted to ease her last moments in life." What has your son done after you broke him out? Nothing. I've been using the Imperious Curse to prevent him from looking for he who must not be named. Crouch explained. Crouch was then taken to court, where he pleaded guilty and his punishment was then set. Sirius Black proposed the Dementor's kiss. Enough Wizengamot members voted for it. 1 week from then, Crouch would have his soul sucked. 3 days later, Sirius Black paid a visit to the Dursleys. Sirius, I'm glad you could come in such a short notice. Vernon said. It wasn't a hard choice to make, Vernon. Sirius replied. I could be either at Hogwarts grading essays or here to discuss an emergency regarding my godson. What was so urgent? Sirius, you know how Harry got that scar, right? Vernon asked. I know. It's believed he got it when Voldemort tried to kill him with the killing curse, but it rebounded. Sirius explained. I believe that, as the name suggests, this killing curse you speak of is known to have killed everybody else that fell victim to it. Vernon replied. Is that correct? Unfortunately yes, Vernon. Sirius explained. Well, since this killing curse left a mark on somebody who wasn't instantly killed, we're afraid there might be some lasting effects. Vernon suggested. Is there anything that can be done to check it out? Well, I can talk to Hogwarts resident Medowitch Poppy Poe M. Frey and ask her to perform a diagnosis spell if that's okay with you. Sirius replied. Will it hurt? Petunia asked in worry. Not at all. Sirius reassured her. I've been subjected to a fair number of those for Quidditch injuries and they never harmed me. In the next day, Harry James Dursley Potter was taken to the infirmary. Mr. Potter, do you know why you've been called here? Madame Pomfrey asked. No. Then allow me to explain, Promslet. Sirius said as he revealed his presence. Your uncle and your aunt presented me with a worrying theory. They fear the spell Voldemort tried to kill you with might have left some sort of residual effect and we'd like to have a diagnosis spell. Is that fine with you? Well, if it's needed. Poppy Pomfrey then performed the spell and found a shocking result. Lord Black. May I talk to you in private? The two of them then left Harry alone while he wondered what was so wrong about him. What's wrong, Poppy? Sirius asked in worry after she took him to a private place. Lord Black, have you ever heard about a horcrux? Poppy asked, still in fear. Yes, but, once Sirius Black understood, he felt like losing his lunch. He didn't. I'm afraid so, Lord Black. Poppy replied. There's a fragment of you-know-who's soul hiding behind Harry's scar. Can't you do anything about it? Sirius desperately pleaded. Had the soul fragment been placed within an inanimate object, I'd just destroy it, but, with a living person as recipient, I can't imagine a solution other than, she hesitated. Killing him. No way. Sirius angrily shouted. Don't worry, Lord Black. She reassured him. I won't do such thing, but we must find a solution quickly. Fox. Sirius exclaimed. What? Phoenix tears are curative, Sirius stated. Ma. YBE Fox tears could eliminate the horcrux. Let's talk to the headmaster. Meanwhile, Harry returned to the Gryffindor common room. Harry, what did Madame Pomfrey want with you? Hermione asked. She was afraid Voldemort's failed attempt to kill me had left some residual effects on me. Harry explained. And they only check it now? Ron asked in confusion. Only now somebody thought about the possibility. Harry explained. I am believed to have survived a curse known to have killed everybody else who fell victim to it, and only recently somebody thought about the possibility of the curse having some effect other than instant death. Meanwhile, at the headmaster's office, Poppy and Sirius told Albus Dumbledore about their findings. Well, I'm sure Fox won't mind helping. Dumbledore commented and said Phoenix reacted positively to that. See, Dumbledore's secret fear was that it'd make harder for Harry to find and destroy other horcruxes, but he'd not let Harry carry a piece of Voldemort any longer. Please review. The Year Goes On. Chapter 9. The Year Goes On. Albus Dumbledore, Minerva McGonagall, Poppy Pomfrey and Sirius Black silently as Fawkes the Phoenix shed tears over he scar Lord Voldemort left on Harry Potter. As tears hit said scar, screams were heard, but everybody in the room wondered where they were coming from, since the tears were falling on a boy whose mouth remained closed. Their wondering ceased when they noticed some black ooze coming from the scar. As the ooze stopped, the screaming also stopped and the scar vanished. Is it over? Sirius asked. Yes, Sirius, Dumbledore answered with even more cheerfulness than usual. Harry is now completely free from whatever lasting effects Lord Voldemort's last attempt on his life had on him. Prongslet, W.I. Without that scar you look even more like James. Sirius commented, shocking Harry. I've lost my scar. You sure did, Mr. Potter. Minerva McGonagall explained. What do I do now? Harry asked while looking at Madame Pomfrey. You can leave now, Mr. Potter. The Medowitch answered. Harry did so and returned to the Gryffindor common room, where he told the tale to his fellow Gryffindors. Harry, do you feel any different without the scar? Cormac McLaggen asked. Like I've lost a burden. Harry explained. Mate, you'd better be ready for when the media learns you no longer have your scar. Ron advised. Yeah, right, Harry scoffed. Like they'd care about that. Oh, they did care. Boy WHO lived loses scar. By Rita Skeeter. Fearing you-know-who's failed attempt to kill our savior had left some potentially harmful side effects. His godfather Lord Sirius Black had Hogwarts, resident Medowitch scan it. The side effects were removed but the boy who lived lost his scar in the process. There are unconfirmed rumors Headmaster Dumbledore's phoenix shed tears over the scar to cure our savior. Can you believe this? Vernon Dursley asked as Sirius Black showed him and Petunia the newspaper. I know, Sirius replied. I told them it was your idea but they wouldn't praise Muggles. Sorry about that. This is not what bothers me, Sirius. Vernon said. What's the big deal about Harry losing his scar? Vernon, in the wizarding world, everything about Harry is a big deal, Sirius explained, especially when it has something to do with what made him famous in the first place. Either way, I hope they haven't bothered my son over this. Vernon grunted. Don't worry, Vernon, Sirius reassured his godson's foster father. As Harry's magical guardian, I talked to the reporters on his behalf. Back at Hogwarts, Severus Snape was livid at the sight of a scar-less Harry. As if the brat wasn't already too much like his father. The potions master muttered, if not for Dumbledore explaining about the true nature of the side effects, Professor Snape would have accused Harry of intentionally making himself more like his father. Just to make the potions master upset. Snape was actually horrified that such a thing happened to a child. Aside from that, nothing else happened at Hogwarts until it was time for the students to go back to their homes for the Christmas holidays. As Harry readied himself to rejoin his foster parents for the occasion, he noticed Ronald Weasley and his brothers weren't doing the same. Won't you go home for the holidays? No, Mum and Dad are going to Romania to visit Charlie. Ron explained. Well, Happy Christmas to all of you, Harry said and then left. Harry took the Hogwarts Express and went back to King's Cross Station, where he met the Dursleys and Sirius Black. Hi, Mum. Hi, Dad. Hi, Sirius. Welcome back, son, Petunia happily said as she hugged him. Vernon then drove them back to Surrey. Sirius Black certainly kept the ride from being boring. So, Prongslet, have you played lots of pranks at the Slytherins? Sirius, I'm not a prankster. Harry explained. Sirius' reaction would have given the impression somebody had told him Quidditch was outlawed. Prongslet, you're a marauder's son, Sirius exclaimed. You must keep the marauder legacy alive. Sirius, you're the son of a dark family. Harry replied. Must you uphold their ideals? That was low, Prongslet. Sirius pouted. At number 4, Privet Drive, Sirius helped himself to the guest room. Are you staying for the holidays, Uncle Sirius? Harry eagerly asked. Yes, Prongslet, Sirius answered. Your uncle and aunt, my parents. Harry corrected. Whatever. Your parents invited me and I gladly accepted their invitation. Sirius explained. During Christmas Day, Harry, Vernon, Petunia and Sirius exchanged gifts. Some owls dropped gifts from other people. One of them was a jumper Molly Weasley knitted for Harry. Another one came with an unsigned note. The note said the package's contents once belonged to his father and he was supposed to use it well. Dad, did you entrust anything to anyone's care? Harry asked Vernon. Harry, I believe whoever wrote this letter meant James Potter. Vernon explained. It's Albus Dumbledore's handwriting, Petunia exclaimed once reading the letter. I recognize it from when he explained why I couldn't attend Hogwarts. That brought a smile to Sirius Black's face. Open it, Prongslet. It must be James's cloak of invisibility. The what? Harry asked but opened the package as eagerly requested by Sirius, and there was indeed a cloak in there. Put it on. Put it on, Sirius eagerly asked. Harry covered his body from the neck down, and then nobody could see the cloak or anything under it. Harry and the Dursleys were visibly shocked. Hilarious, Sirius commented. Vernon, Petunia, you should have seen your faces. Harry, your head is floating in midair. Petunia exclaimed. It's not floating, Petunia. Sirius explained. The rest of his body simply cannot be seen while under the cloak. Well, I believe one with a magically crafted eye could see it. Take it off, Harry. Vernon desperately ordered. You're freaking me out. Harry did so. Promslet, think about all pranks you can pull with it. Sirius said. I can give you some tips. My son will not sneak around to play pranks. Vernon grunted. He's James Potter's son. Sirius replied. He's also the son of Lily Evans, and she wasn't fond of pranks either. Petunia replied. Well, Promslet, I believe I can't blame you for not having James's sense of humor sink. You're raised by your mother's relatives. Sirius replied. But even if you don't use the cloak, you should keep it. It's been in the family for Merlin knows how many generations. In fact, it's belly. Even to be the cloak from the tale of the three brothers. The what? Sorry, Harry, Sirius replied. I forgot Muggle-raised wizards don't grow up hearing the tales of Beetle the Bard. The tale of He three brothers featured three wizards who, as the tale's title suggests, were brothers. One day, they used their magic to cross a river known to have claimed the lives of everyone else who tried to cross it. Death saw them doing it and didn't like the fact they survived. Pretending to congratulate them, Death offered each one of them a reward of their choosing. The eldest brother asked for a wand that would defeat anyone it was used against. The middle brother asked for a way to bring dead people back to life. The youngest one asked for a way to stay hidden from Death. Death didn't like the idea of granting the youngest one's wish but knew that a refusal would make the other brothers suspect something. To grant the elder brother's wish, Death made a wand of elder wood and a core of thestral hair. Thestrals, for those who don't know, are winged horses with a skeletal body, face with reptilian features, and wide, leathery wings that resemble a bat's. They cannot be seen by anyone who hasn't seen anyone dying. That was enough to give chills to Harry and his parents. Death gave the second brother a stone and instructed him to spin it 3 times at the palm of his hand while thinking about whomever he intends to bring back to life. Sirius continued. Death gave the youngest brother a cloak of invisibility. This one? Harry asked. James and I believe so. Sirius answered. Remus not so much. Anyway, after Death gave the brothers their rewards, each one went a separate way. The first brother went to a nearby village and challenged a rival of his to a wizard's duel. With help from the elder wand, the oldest brother killed his rival. Later, he went to a bar and bragged about his wand. That night, while he was sleeping, somebody stole the wand and killed him. That part of the tale is used to teach children not to trust wands made of elder wood. In fact, wands made of that wood are known for being particularly fickle. The second brother used the stone to bring back a long-deceased love interest of his. Only to learn that people brought back to life by the stone don't feel like they belong among the living. He ended up killing himself to be completely reunited with his love. Thanks to the cloak, the youngest brother managed to stay hidden from Death until he decided it was time for him to pass away. The youngest brother then passed the cloak to his son. Now, I know that, while rare, there are more than one invisibility cloaks, but most of them lose their power with time, and this one remains as good as new, reinforcing my belief that it's the cloak of the tale. Most wizards and witches who heard of the tale don't believe these magical artifacts are real, but, for those who do, they're the Deathly Hallows. Most people who believe they're real believe that, instead of being given to the brothers by Death, the brothers were talented enough to create them, and that said brothers were the legendary Peverell brothers, Antioch, the elder, Cadmus, the middle child, and Ignotus, the youngest one. Through James Potter, you're a direct descendant of Ignotus Peverell, Harry. Sirius gave them time to think about it and then showed a pendant with a picture of a triangle. A circle within the triangle and a line cutting both circle and triangle in half. This is the symbol of the Deathly Hallows. The line represents the Elder Wand, the circle represents the resurrection stone. And the triangle represents the cloak of invisibility. For ages, people who believed in their existence used to carry this symbol to be recognized by one another. However, it all changed when Gellert Grindelwald carried it. Now everyone bearing it is likely to be mistaken by someone who believes in his dark ideals. "Who's this Gellert Grindelwald, Sirius?" Harry asked. Aside F. Rom reading Dumbledore's chocolate frog card about Headmaster Dumbledore defeating him. "I've never heard about him before." Gellert Grindelwald was the Dark Lord who terrorized wizarding Europe in the 1940s. Sirius explained. He was so terrible he remained the darkest lord in history until Voldemort started terrorizing England, and even then Grindelwald remained a close second. Grindewa. LD destroyed the Deathly Hallows symbol, meaning like Hitler destroyed the swastikas. Let's see the other gifts, shall we?" Vernon asked, disgusted at the idea of bringing Hitler upon the conversation. They then opened the other gifts, including some chocolate frogs. After the Christmas holidays, the rest of the term would have been uneventful except for groundskeeper Hagrid's cabin suddenly catching fire. Like all other students, Harry James Dursley Potter was curious about this. At lunchtime, Headmaster Dumbledore decided to satisfy their curiosity. "Students of Hogwarts, it's with S. Adness I must inform you our groundkeeper, Rubeus Hagrid, was arrested for illegal dragon breeding," he said without the typical twinkle on the eyes. "Hopefully, he'll just have to pay a fine and then will be able to resume his duties as groundskeeper and gamekeeper. Now I've explained what happened to him, please don't let me keep you from enjoying your lunch." Ronald Weasley was the first one to react to the mention of lunch. As the Muggle World stores started selling Easter eggs, Vernon and Petunia Dursley were at one of those stores looking for an egg for Harry. "Vernon, do you think Harry will like this one?" Petunia asked as she held one Easter egg. "Too small," Vernon scoffed, albeit most people would disagree. "Let's buy this one," he said as he showed an even bigger egg. "Yes, Vernon, this egg has a proper size," Petunia replied. The other shoppers, not acquainted to Harry, were now assuming the boy to be just as fat as Vernon. "But, Vernon, Harry never ate this much in ONLY one day, and he'll only be back from boarding school for the Easter holidays and then return there and not come back until summer vacation. He can take the rest back with him," Vernon suggested. "He'll probably finish it on the way back." Meanwhile, at Hogsmeade, Sirius Black was having a similar idea. "After all those years with nothing but Muggle delicacies, my godson will certainly enjoy a magical Easter egg, don't you think?" Sirius asked Remus as the both of them were at Honeyduke's for some Easter shopping. "An extra bit of chocolate can't harm," Remus replied in agreement. At Easter Day, Harry once again rejoined the Dursleys at Privet Drive. "Thanks, Dad. Thanks, Mum," Harry exclaimed. "It's the biggest egg I ever had." Before either parent had a chance to reply, they heard the doorbell. Answering it, they found Sirius Black. "Happy Easter, Dursleys," Sirius greeted. "May I get in?" "Certainly, Sirius," Vernon replied as he made way for Sirius, who gave Harry an Easter egg with chocolate frogs inside. Harry had a good time chasing after them. Petunia, not so much. She just wanted that to stop before one of the frogs escaped the house and the neighbors saw it. "So, Sirius, what happened to that groundskeeper who got arrested for that dragon thing?" Vernon asked, wanting to divert the topic from the frogs. "Well, our Minister of Magic Cornelius Fudge and his senior Undersecretary Dolores Umbridge were moved by their biases against anything not completely human to try to get him to Azkaban for that, but Headmaster Dumbledore pointed out nobody other than Hagrid himself got hurt." "He's luck no child got hurt," Vernon commented. "I'd demand the Ministry to hang him for that if something happened to Harry because of that." "I doubt there'd be enough rope for anyone that huge, Vernon," Sirius replied. Still remembering how Hagrid easily towered over Vernon, the Dursleys agreed. He was fined and got a warning. As the year ended, Gryffindor won the Hogwarts Quidditch Cup. Cormac was seen as a hero among Gryffindors for that and, by a narrow margin, the House Cup. When Harry and Sirius boarded the Hogwarts Express, Sirius said, "Don't worry about the restriction to underage magic, Harry. Just spend summer at my place and the Ministry's trace won't be able to tell your spells apart from mine. I won't spend summer away from my parents just to be able to do magic while outside Hogwarts." Harry replied, Okay, Prongslet, Sirius said while trying, and failing, to hide sadness. Originally, I'd extend this FIC to all years, but, since I'm interested in focusing on other stories, I'll end it at the first year's end and perhaps I'll make a sequel at a later time.